Welcome to a live episode of Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Walt.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another, this time strange, episode of Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And we are here for Kouri Richens' November 12th hearing. As you can see, though, we are on a court audio recording. Apparently, the pool camera is not there. The resources were apparently stretched thin, and there is no camera. So we have an audio recording. They're running a couple minutes late. This could be a little bit odd, but I'm going to walk us through what we're expecting today. And then you all can feel free to chat, stick around, and listen. There is a chance the camera will go up at some point soon. If anyone happens to see a camera on this, let us know. But we've been speaking to the court all morning, the COE has, and as far as we know, it is just going to be audio. Thank you to Lori Woodman saying that STS, it is in fact the best nation ever. So the judge presiding over this case, a guy named Judge Richard Mrazek. The attorney, the prosecutor, the county attorney is Margaret Olson, just to let you know the players. And then you've got Wendy Lewis and Catherine Nestor here, who are part of the defense team. Very quick background for those who do not know what this story is about. Kouri Richens, the mother of three, she's been in custody since May of 2023 when she was accused of using 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl to allegedly poison her husband. And that was not the first time. She had tried doing it on Valentine's Day of the same year of 2023. So she is facing charges of felony aggravated murder, attempted criminal homicide, 2 counts of distribution of a controlled substance related to the fentanyl, 2 counts of mortgage fraud. She was trying to flip a home that was in her husband's name, 2 counts of fraudulent insurance claims, and 3 counts of forgery. Kouri Richens, like most defendants, has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Now, what's interesting about this, last week, the state filed a motion looking to drop 2 of the 11 charges she is facing, and they're both related to the controlled substance. Today, what we are expecting is Judge Richard Mrazek to consider the motions to sever. So I'll explain that in a moment. The motion to dismiss charges, as well as, and this is the big one, Kouri Richens wants out of jail. She wants to get out of there, just like her friend P. Diddy. Once you're in jail, you don't want to be there, and she is requesting bond and or bail here to get herself out, but it's not looking too likely for her. The state made it clear that they are not seeking the death penalty. So that is off the table here. And essentially, Kouri Richens' defense team is saying she does have a hearing today, Vivian, but what we are hearing is it's only going to be audio unless the pool camera is not there. Sometimes the court will deliver a video feed, but here you can see this is actually a audio recording. And Space, do me a favor, if it starts, just let me know and kick up the volume. But right now they were just doing a little bit of talking as we go. But Spaced and COE, let me know if the proceedings start in earnest. Audio only for the live stream. There may be video later on. Again, they're telling us that their resources there were stretched very thin, and that's why they're doing the audio. But essentially, again, the defense is saying, let our client out of jail. She's been on good behavior after 17 months behind bars, which the state has other things to say about it. And one of the reasons she wants out is the three sons who she allegedly took their father away from. She says she does not have a relationship with them while in jail. And so she needs to be out in order to, be with her boys and make sure her boys don't forget about her. So what the defense is also trying to do here, they're trying to separate the charges. And I'm going to read this specifically. The motion to dismiss the 2 counts come as attorneys for Kouri Richens appeal to Judge Richard Mrazek to separate the charges of attempted criminal homicide, 1 count of distribution, the 2 counts of mortgage fraud, and 2 counts of forgery from the other charges. So it gets really complicated. But basically, to break it down in layman's terms, she tried, according to the state, to poison her husband, Eric Richins, previously to the time where he actually died. But she tried doing it on Valentine's Day of the same year. And so they're saying that's a separate instance. So you've got Valentine's Day, you get March 3rd, or the 2 dates. March 3rd is the day that he actually succumbed to the fentanyl and passed away. But they're now saying, well, look, you can't charge her for the Valentine's Day attempted poisoning, or you can't try her for that the same time you're trying her for March 3rd, because they say it'll prejudice the jury potentially, which in my own opinion is just a laughable argument. But the defense is going to try to suppress whatever they're going to try to suppress here. IGG rocks. Kouri, sick and tired of dealing with consequences. Yes, she is. This is what the defense had to say. The prejudice that Mrs. Richins will face if the jurors are allowed to consider 2 separate alleged acts involving an alleged intent to cause death cannot be overstated. The fact that the allegations connected to February 14th, the first poisoning attempt, are wholly speculative and circumstantial makes the prejudice to Mrs. Richins even more profound. The prosecutors basically are arguing against severing the charges. They're citing what they are calling an arc. They're describing it as an arc that goes from alleged fraud involving this property that she was trying to flip, as well as, obviously taking her husband's life. This is Eric Richins right here. If you guys have not seen him, that is the guy who, according to the state of Utah, lost his life to his wife giving him 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. You see there the 3 kids whose faces are blurred out. Eric Richins just looking like a typical American guy, smile on the face, very sad. You see Brianna here, Brie, March 13th, 1982 to March 4th, 2022, Eric Eugene Richins. That the state is saying is courtesy of his wife, Kouri. The prosecutors came out and basically released a statement of their own saying the evidence supporting each of the offenses establishes a readily discernible direct relationship between all 9 offenses. Considering the offenses together, the defendant's parasitic behavior forms an arc of increasingly aggressive, risky, opportunistic, and bold actions required to perpetuate the defendant's facade of accomplishment and success. So the state is having none of it, but they are willing to drop 2 of the drug charges. These motions were filed last week, and so now today this judge is going to hear this. It's actually unclear still whether or not he will rule on any of this today. So I'm going to bring back up the court audio here. Let's I'm going to take this off and let's see what is happening here. Oh, space. Are they just still talking? COE?
Yeah, they're prepping still. It may be a while.
Yeah, so we're hearing, how long are we hearing this might go, COE?
Hours.
I know till they start. I mean, do we know?
She's not there yet, so it could be a while. It sounds like they're running about 30 to 45 minutes late.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Well, how about this? Ask Joel anything for a while, but I'm gonna keep going through some of this. If you guys have questions for me, questions about Kouri, questions about anything, as you just heard, the COE said we have no control over this. The court appears to be running late. So maybe something's going on. Maybe there's a deal in the works. We do not know. We're also continuing to try to get video of this, although the court is telling us a pool camera is not there. Resources were stretched too thin. So we're going to see what happens. Gigi McKelvey is saying, good friend of ours, that wow, wasn't expecting this. The hearing could go 4 to 5 hours. That's a lot of hours. By the way, we are supposed to be doing another show. We're doing 2 more shows today. One at 3:30 with Ruth Markel, which I'm looking forward to, and then 7 o'clock tonight, Suzanne Simpson. We've got our Linda Johnson, the special prosecutor from the Alec Baldwin trial, coming on to discuss that, and the geo profiler, because she is still missing, is going to tell us, what are the steps, what's the process, what are they trying to do to find Suzanne Simpson, eerily similar to Suzanne Morphew, including the name Suzanne, which is kind of weird. And one's husband is Barry, and this guy's name is Brad. Weird. Husbands both have B. I just kind of figuring this out right now. It's kind of weird. But there you're looking at a picture of Eric Richins and Kouri Richens. They look like the perfect all-American couple. She's got her hair up in a bun, smiling. Your typical Instagram picture. Lo and behold, she goes, and according to the state, she poisons her husband 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. Yes, this is filibuster time. I would have been a good congressman or a senator. I'm sitting here. Look at this. Look at this. Vesper Martini, COE. This upsets me. She did not get it, or he or she, I assume she did not get one for this show. So there you go. Super Planner Girl says, the grass is never greener. This is interesting. COE and Steve Cohen, if you're listening, UF hearings tomorrow. Are those congressional hearings tomorrow? That could be really interesting, actually. And we are planning to get back to this is I was going to do a show. If you guys have been watching long enough, we have a crime scene reconstructionist on the show. And just because I mentioned him now, I'm completely just Scott Roeder. I don't know why I was blanking on his name, but Scott Roeder famously did the crime scene reconstruction for Oscar Pistorius in South Africa. Anyway, long story. This has nothing to do with this, by the way, but we've got time, so I'll share a story. So Scott Roeder did if you remember back in Vegas, I don't know, was it this summer or maybe the spring, a family in Las Vegas claimed to have seen 9-foot aliens in their backyard. Even police were like stunned at what they claimed to have seen. They saw some UFO stuff. Look at this. Everyone's into UFOs here. So we'll get to this in a second, Ashley Rose. So anyway, Scott Roeder does a reconstruction of that crime scene. And he claims that aliens were, in fact, in Las Vegas, that these people were not lying. How or why he figured that out, I'm not 100% sure, but 9-foot aliens may have, in fact, visited Las Vegas. Believe it or not, a Japanese network and an Australian network flew Scott Roeder around the world to talk about this. He's probably back now, and I'm going to get him on the show on a Sunday night to just talk about it because it's at the very least entertaining. But he is a real crime scene reconstructionist, and he claims that the images that were captured do in fact show aliens. So if we hear from aliens today, it is because we mentioned it on STS. There you go. Then there'll be a whole lot more to worry about than what we're all worrying about right now, but you just never know. House of Representatives tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I am, as Steve Cohen would say, down to get down. If now I'm going to reach out to a couple of my UFO peeps and see if they'll come on. I would actually enjoy that quite a bit. Lindsey Grandy telling us that she has friends who worked at Area 51. This just went way off the rails, by the way. Just to get back to Kouri Richens for 1 second, and then I guess we can have a little bit of fun while we wait for this audio. COE, I'm going to pop you in here. Can you please confirm that you are monitoring audio of this to let me know when it starts? Because if you recall, yesterday we were actually the first ones to break the news on the Delphi trial, thanks to Susan Hendricks. But about 20 minutes later, the COE popped in and said, did you guys hear about the verdict, which we had reported 20 minutes earlier? So, COE, I just want to know, are you listening to this? Can you confirm if there is anything happening here?
Hi, yes, I am in the meeting. I just pulled it down because it hasn't started yet, and there are just attorneys and other people inside of the courtroom talking about things not related to the courtroom, and I just don't want any hot mics. But I am monitoring it and I'm listening, and as soon as it begins, I will let you know. But for now, we're on standby, and as you know, sometimes courtrooms run behind, so it could be
Sometimes they also don't have video sometimes. And also, COE, I don't know if you heard, but there was a verdict in Delphi. It came back.
Very funny.
I think I could just do a show alone, just entertain myself all day long. Kouri Richins, for those who do not know, wrote this book famously and appeared on morning shows in Salt Lake City. It's a book about grieving. Are you with me? And if you see there, that's Eric with the angel wings looking down on his family. And it says, dedication to my amazing husband. So she goes on this local morning show in Salt Lake City to promote this book. The book is no longer available, but if in fact these allegations are true, which the state asserts that they are, this woman is next level cray cray, and that's why there's about to be a hearing. I'll be very surprised if she gets out on bail, but we'll have to see. So she did write this book. And then, by the way, from jail, there were some audio quotes that came out where she said, the world has yet to hear who I really am, what I've really done or didn't do. What I really didn't do is murder my husband. The world hasn't heard the real facts of the case. It's time to begin some serious damage control. Who I really am and all that matters is a wife of Eric Richins and a mom to 3 beautiful boys. So, of course, she is proclaiming her innocence. Again, if you are just joining us, 2 things. Ask Joel anything. You can ask me anything. I wish I could loop Carmen here somehow. She'll probably FaceTime me in a moment. But we are just waiting on audio from the courtroom in Salt Lake City, where Kouri Richins, or around Salt Lake City, where Kouri Richins is about to have a hearing to see if she can get out of jail. That's what she wants, as well as severing the charges. So she would be tried separately on the attempted murder charge. She tried, according to the state, to poison him once before on a lovely day on Valentine's Day. It seems a lot of like crimes, passion crimes occur on Valentine's Day. I guess it's triggering, which is why I do not celebrate it. Never been a fan of Valentine's Day. Probably because I didn't have Valentine's a lot of years. And one day I'll share my Valentine's, my crazy Valentine's story, but today is not the day for that. That's it. I am obviously just sitting here along with you guys. We're waiting for audio. Again, the court telling us that the pool cam was stretched too thin. So right now, this is what we're waiting on right here. You're looking at it. This is the courtroom audio and you see Judge Richard Mrazek there. He is the judge, and he is going to be presiding over this. The CEO's paying attention. Aliens. Who believes in aliens? Who thinks it's crazy? Let's have a little bit of fun. What I'm worried about now, COE, is this is supposed to go 3 to 4 hours, and we're supposed to be doing a show with Ruth Markel at 3:30. So the COE could probably, Space Coast could probably swing it to switch this over to the Trials channel. I don't know, but we'll have to figure that out. It's about 3 hours away. Julie Frew, our great mod, is in the house. Analytical Blarney. Aliens are not going to hurt us. Don't be afraid of them. I would have to agree with you on that. Let me scroll. I'm going to go to the bottom of the chat. And I will, it's a good thing that I talk to myself in life a lot, because now I can talk to you, but I'm really just, talking to myself. Ida says, Ida Shaw JD, friend of the show, it's a dumb holiday aimed at making us feel lonely. Yes, spend money and nothing more. 100% agree. 100% agree. Lindsay Grandy is with me on this too. Won't change my mind. Michelle Salter, by the way, if you guys have not seen Josh Ritter's Courtroom Confidential, it's a really good new show. And he interviewed me. I don't know why, but he interviewed me. And I think last night he interviewed Vinnie Politan, which I have to watch. But Josh is a really good interviewer. And it's just about, like, how did you get to become a content creator? I guess in Vinny's case, how did he become like the face of true crime? So there you go. There is a trial date for Kouri, I believe. I just don't have it off the top of my head. I think it's sometime in April. COE, do you happen to know? Someone is asking that.
I do. It's April 28th.
There you go. COE is on top of it, except for the Delphi verdict. April 28th, and I'm going to go. I'm going to that. I'm going to that as long as it's not during Passover bugs. I'll be going to that. Joel, can you show your babyface video of you doing your first journalist gig in front of a camera? I would prefer not to, although somehow Josh Ritter found that. I look like I'm about 9 years old with a triple XL suit, and I weighed about 103 pounds, soaking wet. So a little embarrassing, but what can you do?
Hey, Joel, just want to give you a quick update. So the AP is there. A couple of other people are there. They're showing up with cameras. They're setting up, but they are not going live. So they will be recording it for later, but we do have the audio live.
Yeah. So we're going to do the audio.
500139, State of Utah versus Kouri Richins. Can I have
This is
counsel
it,
for
guys.
the state make their appearance, please?
Good morning, Your Honor.
We are
Brad Bloodworth, Margaret Olson, Fred Burmester, and Joseph Hill for the state.
Thank you.
We're going to
And
listen
on
in
behalf
now,
of
guys.
Ms. Richins.
Your Honor, Kathy Nestor, Wendy Lewis, and Alex Ramos here with Ms. Richins.
Good morning, Ms. Richins. Okay, we are here on several motions. I don't have strong feelings about what order to do these in, but I have a proposal, if you'll hear me out for a moment. First, the state's motion to dismiss counts 3 and 4. Ms. Nestor, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
And that is without prejudice, correct, Mr. Bloodworth?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. State's motion to dismiss counts 3 and 4, which is docket 703, is granted. Counts 3 and 4 in the third amended information are hereby dismissed without prejudice. Ms. Nestor, does it make sense to address the motion to sever next?
Sure, Your Honor.
So that was quick.
Defendant's motion to sever, docket 677. Let me ask you just a couple of questions, and then I'm happy to follow you wherever you want to go.
Okay.
You're asking for an order severing the counts, I think, into 3 trials, potentially?
No, 2.
Just 2?
Yeah.
So trial 1 presumably would be count 1, aggravated murder, and then counts 7, 8, and 11. Insurance fraud in January and June of 2022, and then a related forgery in January of 2022. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And then the attempted aggravated murder, would that be tried by itself or with 5, 6, 9, and 10?
Honestly, we hadn't gotten that far. I figure we'll worry about that later.
Fair enough. So the real issue is 1, 7, 8, and 11 by themselves.
Yes, sir.
Figure out what to do with 2, 5, 6, 9, and 10 later.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So may I please the court?
Yeah, I mean, the real thrust of this is why to sever the attempted
Right.
murder charge from the murder charge.
Right. So just to lay a basic foundation, and I know your honor's aware, but just for the record, the statute that determines whether counts are properly joined in the information is 77-88-1, and counts should only be joined if they are based on the same conduct or otherwise connected together in their commission, or if they're alleged to have been part of a common scheme or plan. Now, I did not see the language in this information alleging a common scheme or plan, but even if they make the argument outside the face of the information, it is our position that the first analysis you have to make is it properly joined at all in the information under that statutory analysis? It is our position that the mortgage fraud, I'll just call them the mortgage fraud counts, do not even meet the statutory analysis. They are just wholly unrelated to the allegations that are made with the allegations of causing the death of Eric Richins.
Let me push you a little bit on that. Just
Okay.
to get your responses. What I understand the state's arguments are. The state argues an arc here of conditions prior to June of 2021 in which Ms. Richins had a subjective understanding that she would fare better financially if Eric died during the marriage as opposed to a divorce, and had a real estate business that was highly leveraged, running out of credit, owed a lot of money to hard money lenders. Starts doing things allegedly in June of 2021 to fraudulently secure more liquidity and credit. And in the state's view, I'm inferring this, I think, didn't want to get found out. And so it would that, and I understand there's a lot of other steps we need to go through here, including 404B and 403.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't that create the type of direct relationship or precipitating event relationship that the Utah Court of Appeals talks about when interpreting when things are connected together in their commission? She needed money. She was committing crimes in a coordinated way to get the money.
So the slippery slope that you would have to slide down to connect a year prior to something she did in her business to obtain a loan, to somehow connect that to, they've not made any allegations that there was a plan to cause death a year before. There's no allegation that she even hadn't, they've introduced zero evidence that there was a plan spanning back over a year temporally to her making a decision to take an act in her private, separate real estate business that wasn't even connected to her husband. So as far as based on the same conduct, which is what the statute requires, the statute requires it be based on the same conduct or connected together in their commission. And the case law makes it clear that connected together does look at temporal connection. And a year prior with zero evidence of connection is, it would basically be as if you were to say any crime that they could suggest that she committed, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years before that had anything to do with money somehow must connect to the fact that she ultimately made a decision in their mind to commit a murder for pecuniary gain. And that's just so tenuous. That's not at all what the statute entails. I mean, basically, we would be trying two separate periods of time in history, two totally different sets of witnesses, two totally different sets of exhibits that have zero connection other than the fact that it has to do with money. And if that were the case, we would see informations that would be way beyond the pale of what the legislature intended and an information to contain. So we would strongly disagree that any allegation of something she did in her business a year before had any connection whatsoever or was based on the same conduct or connected together in the commission with any allegations of what happened a year later. So we don't think that the mortgage fraud cases even survive the statutory analysis. We think they're gone. As far as the attempt charge, I would concede there's definitely a stronger argument on the attempt charge to survive the statutory analysis. The focus on the attempt charge would be more on the prejudice analysis, which is the second prong that you have to get to.
Let's go there.
Okay.
So under 4A,
Yeah.
it's the reciprocal admission test, right?
Right.
Under 404B.
That's
And
correct.
my understanding is we have to do both.
Correct.
Would evidence regarding the attempt be admissible in a trial regarding the actual homicide?
That's
and
correct.
vice versa, would evidence regarding the actual homicide be admissible in a trial of the attempt?
That's correct.
Talk to me about those.
So we kind of did this argument exhaustively at the prelim.
We did. In fairness,
Yeah.
I
Different
was
standard.
unsure,
Yeah.
right, how it would
Yeah.
fall out.
Yeah.
I've since had some time
Yeah.
to dig. There's no reported case in Utah to this effect, but courts in Illinois, Virginia, and then the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals state explicitly subsequent events are admissible under 404B. It's not prior bad acts only, even though that
Right.
phrase is used all over the place
Right.
in Utah's reported case law.
Right.
And the text of the rule says other bad acts, not prior bad acts.
True.
Does the defense have any quarrel with the idea that subsequent acts are the subject of a 404B analysis?
I hate to concede that. I certainly respect the court's position and argument that you're making. I don't think I'm in a position to concede that because it is not super clear in Utah law, and this is a case with a long life ahead of it.
Sure.
So I don't want to concede that. I do believe that the stronger perception, the stronger perspective, if we're arguing whether or not the attempt charge should be tried with the murder charge, is the position that we're standing on is similar to the position that we argued in front of you at the prelim under a different standard. But the idea is that the lack of evidence in terms of the attempt charge, there is the case law that we referred to in our brief does suggest that the strength of the evidence is something that you do look at when you're trying to decide the prejudice analysis.
And we don't really do Shickles anymore, but I
Yeah.
take your point.
And the concern that we have is that you have the aggravated murder charge, which the state has, that's where they're putting their eggs in their basket. But as far as the attempted murder charge, they have no medical proof. They have no suggestion. They have no evidence of what was ingested, if it was a allergy, if it was a stomach virus, if it was whatever. And the problem with that is that by bringing that into this case, and it's temporarily separate by about a month, right? A little less than a month, a few weeks. And that the prejudice that would outcrop from that when there's such weak evidence on the attempt would be overwhelming in terms of if you do a probative value versus prejudice analysis, right?
Yeah,
So
pause for a minute.
Yeah.
So we can skip to 403 if you want, but let's
Yeah.
stay with 404B.
Okay.
So the issue is is this other acts evidence that falls in the propensity bucket or some other proper purpose?
Well, I think I'm going to leave that to the state to argue. I don't want to make their argument.
Argues
Yeah,
several,
right,
but the ones that stick out to me are preparation, plan, intent.
right.
Now, depending on which direction we're talking, not all of them apply. Preparation and plan and intent, all three seem to apply as non-character purposes when discussing whether evidence of the attempt would be admissible for the ag murder charge. We have the state's theory of securing fentanyl, administering it to Eric via food or drink, and then leaving the scene to have deniability. That's their theory of the case.
Right,
And their theory is that she did it in February 14.
right,
It didn't work. She asked for something stronger. She did it again in March, and it worked that time.
right.
So there seems to be a non-character purpose under 404B. We can talk about whether the probative value of the February 14 events is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice, not just prejudice. If it's not prejudice, it doesn't matter.
Right,
It's prejudicial because it matters.
right.
So tell me why it's unfair.
Well, I think it's unfair because the
we go.
entire basis for the allegations of the attempt are based on pure speculation. There's zero physical evidence, direct evidence, nothing. So
It's circumstantial.
correct. At best, I would say pure speculation. So the problem that you have is if you bring that in and you allow them to make those leaps to create a character analysis, which by the way, at the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor absolutely got up and made a character argument.
I mean, we would certainly have to instruct the jurors that they are prohibited from drawing any character-based or propensity-like conclusions.
Right. But I mean, this is so overwhelming in terms of prejudice that, to unring that bell is not realistic, I think. Even the best crafted limiting instruction is not going to be able to eliminate the damage that type of prejudice is going to do to a jury in the box. So we do believe that as far as the attempt charge goes, that the key things to look at are the fact that it is being used for character. I don't see how.
Tell me why you think that is the conclusion the court should draw here.
The same reason that the state stood up at the prelim and said she did it once, she learned, she did it again, right?
Why isn't that preparation, plan, and intent? Rather, she's a murderous person who tried twice.
Well, it's so intertwined with propensity. How do you unwind that, right? Like it's completely intertwined with propensity. So the argument being that, well, she did it. If she did it before, she must have done it again, right? And so that type of prejudice is just devastating to a defense, and it's based on zero evidence. There's no evidence of it. So to allow I think the 403 almost kind of trumps the 404B argument in this case because of the fact that there is no evidence of this. There is no evidence that Eric Richins on February 14th that he ingested anything that was given to him by Kouri, that he had a drug, that he had controlled substances in his body, that he himself made statements that he was having an allergic reaction. He took allergic medication. It addressed the problem. And he had a normal day after he took a nap. So to make this leap and say that because he had an allergic reaction on a day 2 weeks before he died means that Kouri Richins tried to kill him is prejudice that we cannot surmount and has zero probative value because there's just no support. There's no support for it. So we would ask that severance be made on the 403 and 404B analysis. We would concede it's probably going to survive the statutory analysis, the attempt charge.
What about going the other way?
Letting the murder into the attempted murder? Really interesting question. Since I'm only trying to sever out the attempted murder, I hadn't made the opposite analysis
But
yet.
imagine the state, for whatever reason, elected to try count 2
first.
and wanted to admit evidence of what occurred between February 14 and March 4.
I would object.
Walk through the analysis for me. Because I think I have to do both.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you have to. I think you can. I don't think you're required to.
The Court of Appeals talks about a reciprocal analysis.
It does. But I think when the remedy we're seeking is only the forward severing.
Fine, we'll do it
Yeah.
your way. Imagine that the only count on the verdict form is count 1.
Mhm.
And they want to admit evidence of what occurred between January 2022 and February 14.
Mhm.
Is it coming in? You
Well,
would say no for all the reasons you just explained, right?
I would say no for all the reasons I just explained.
But if they go the other way and the only count on the verdict form is count 2, and the state wants to admit evidence of what happened after February 14,
Mhm.
walk me through the analysis.
Well, I think there's a pretty strong argument that it's wholly irrelevant if they're only trying the attempt charge. The fact that he ultimately passed wouldn't change. I mean, the
Why doesn't
offense
it
is
go to
concluded.
intent?
Well, because the offense is concluded as of the unsuccessful attempt, right?
Right, but we're talking about circumstantial evidence of pre-February 14 intent based upon events, action statements made after February 14.
Mhm. I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting question. We kind of had this discussion at the prelim. Does it mean, if it happened later that it must have happened before and vice versa, right? And I think that goes to how intertwined the prejudice and the propensity arguments all are, and how this prejudice is just really overwhelming. Honestly, to me, this does seem unnecessary to try them together because of the fact that if Ms. Richins were to be tried for the aggravated murder charge and acquitted, it seems highly unlikely she would be convicted separately of an attempt. If she were convicted of the aggravated murder, why in the world do you need to have a separate trial on the attempt? So basically, we're risking reversible error here and a new trial on a count that, for all intents and purposes, is secondary and not likely to change the needle either way. So, I mean, to default, to avoid error, to make sure that the case proceeds in the least prejudicial way possible for Ms. Richins, and that she gets the fairest trial possible, we should sever out the attempt charge, worry about that later, which is probably never, because either way, it's going to be decided by the aggravated murder charge, one way or the other. If she's convicted of aggravated murder, she's in jail for life. And what in the world do you try the attempt for? If she's acquitted, there's no way they're going to convict her of the attempt with no evidence of drugs being provided to him at all. So to me, the safest, most cautious, most judicially economy argument would be to sever it, to eliminate this risk of prejudice, which we will most certainly argue if there's ever an appeal in this case, and to just focus on the aggravated murder charge, which is what the state is here to do. And that's what we're asking the court to do on the severance.
But even if we did that, I would still have to contend with the 404B and 403 analysis regarding the events between January 2022 and say
Yes.
March 3rd.
Yes.
And I still have to decide whether it's coming in.
Yes.
And if I decide that it's admissible,
Right.
then there's no basis to sever the counts.
Right. But I mean, we're arguing it's not admissible for all of these reasons, right? We're saying that it's less probative, it's unfairly prejudicial, that it shows propensity for all those same reasons, and that there's just no substantial evidence backing it sufficient to overcome the undue prejudice. So that's the same argument that we're making.
Okay. And then as I read your motion, no objection to trying the January 2022 insurance fraud / forgery counts and the June 2022 insurance fraud count with count 1, the ag.
I think after reviewing the facts related to that and reviewing the statute, I think it is going to survive the statutory analysis. And as far as severing it, I mean, it's just, we're not asking for those to be severed. We admit those are properly joined.
Okay.
But it's just the mortgage fraud and the attempt that we are now attempting. And now that they've dismissed the distribution, that would have been part of it too.
Understood.
Okay.
I'll make sure you get the last word.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Blood,
Good morning, Your Honor.
where would you like to go?
I'm happy to respond to any of your questions. I want to, though, just point out 2 things. One, regarding the other bad acts analysis, the both ways, and it is other bad acts, not prior bad acts.
Right.
State v. Von Niederhausen is the Utah case. It's at 427 P. 3rd, 1277. I'll say that again. Von Niederhausen, 427 P. 3rd, 1277. And that says exactly what the court did, that it is other bad acts. It does go both ways. What's on the court's mind about this?
So I think I understand the state's position regarding the relationship between the attempted ag murder and the actual ag murder, counts 1 and 2. I think the state's case or argument would be much more difficult if there wasn't this text message that, in the state's view, links the events in which the defendant allegedly says, "I need something stronger."
Your Honor, the text messages, several sets of text messages. The court mentioned correctly that it is a circumstantial case, but there is evidence.
Right.
The argument of no evidence is baseless. The circumstantial evidence is corroborated significantly by other testimony, but also a lot of digital forensic evidence. And particularly the text messages between the defendant and Eric Richins on Valentine's Day that goes to his, how he was feeling in the present. And that is why the evidence, in fact, both ways, as it relates to preparation, plan, and intent, is significant and highly probative under the 403 analysis.
So pause there for a minute. I think the state has a fair point that preparation, plan, intent, all 3 are non-character purposes for admitting evidence regarding the intent in a trial for count 1 ag murder. I'm not sure you can make the same argument regarding preparation and plan when going backwards in time, but intent, I think, still applies.
So, okay, setting aside intent, also motive, right?
Sure.
The motive is identical for both.
But the motive relates to the financial conditions. I don't know that the attempt to kill someone and then killing them, or the killing them with respect to an intent, goes to motive. Motive is going to relate to things like the insurance fraud, the forgery, circumstances, evidence relating to the financial distress that Ms. Richins and her business was experiencing.
So it's the same motive for both the attempted murder and the aggravated murder. Pecuniary gain,
right,
is an element of, it's the aggravator, right? It's
but
an element.
attempting to kill someone is not evidence of motive for killing them. Motive has to come from something else. It's evidence of intent, having actually achieved killing somebody is not evidence of motive for attempting to do it. It has to come externally. I don't think we're disagreeing.
So perhaps on the other way, from the attempt to the successful completion of murder, I think motive factors in. She needed to finish the job. But as it relates to the financial, I agree with the court. It's hard to go backwards from aggravated murder to attempted aggravated murder.
Couple other questions. There's a line of law in Utah regarding intrinsically intertwined. And when counts are intrinsically intertwined, you do not engage in the 404B analysis. I did not see that line of authority cited in the briefing. Is the state's position that these are not intrinsically intertwined such that the court can escape 404B?
No, that's not the state's position, Your Honor. They are intrinsically intertwined, sufficient enough to escape. But we think the 403B argument is just as persuasive, perhaps more.
Okay. Talk to me about the June and August 2021 counts.
So-
Why should those be tried at the same time as the counts that arise from 2022 conduct?
So, yes, Your Honor. Again, they are integrally intertwined. The evidence of the non-character purpose is evidence of one goes to the other and vice versa. As we briefed, it's interesting. The state, to some measure, may have handicapped itself because between the June 2021 first charged mortgage fraud and the March 3rd charged aggravated homicide, we, out of kind of prosecutorial discretion, prosecutorial restraint, only charged some mortgage frauds that we knew about at the time and which were easy to prove on using paper and wouldn't distract all that much from the rest of the trial. But in forming the behavioral arc, right, one precipitating another, between the June mortgage fraud and the aggravated murder in March of the next year, the state could have charged many more
Objection,
crimes.
Your Honor.
It's an argument. I'm not taking it as true. Go ahead.
Could have charged many more crimes which highlighted that arc, everything from more identical mortgage frauds to tax fraud to mail fraud, et cetera. So,
Well, we have the information we've got.
Sure.
And so, even though the June and August financial crimes, counts 5, 6, 9, 10, are relevant to a non-character issue such as motive, it seems to me that the danger there, given the temporal distance of the jury making a propensity inference versus a non-character inference, is higher. So why not cleave those four off to eliminate that risk?
Your Honor, I'm not sure that the propensity arguments hold. A propensity to commit financial frauds is not the same as a propensity to commit murder. We don't have like a propensity to commit a certain, set of assaults or propensity. Most of the propensity cases, right, are in sexual assault cases, where all the different offenses are generally the same offense. That's not the case here. We don't. One with a propensity to commit frauds does not necessarily have a propensity to commit aggravated murder.
No, but the danger is that the jury will say, well, she's a liar and a cheat in June 2021, so we can't believe anything that came in after that or what she says. We can't trust her at all. That's a propensity type inference that we need to guard against.
Your Honor, the
It's
court.
other crimes or wrongs. It just
Sure,
doesn't
and
have to be
if the
just a
wrong
crime.
is just propensity to lie, for
Right.
example, we can guard against that. Certainly, prosecution would need to guard against that in its presentation to the jury. The court can instruct against that, but I suspect under a 404B analysis, as it relates to the financial motive, which is an element of the pecuniary gain aggravator.
Sure.
My sense is this comes in anyway, because the state's going to be in a position of not only having to prove that she was in financial stress and needed money, but that she knew she was in financial stress and needed money.
But you can prove that with the events in January of 2022. That circumstance existed as strongly, if not more strongly, at that point.
Your Honor, some of the best evidence of her knowledge, right, which is again a non-character purpose under 404B, the best evidence of her knowledge are the various financial frauds, to include the mortgage fraud as early as June 2021. And the state is entitled, and the Burke court talks about this, the state is entitled to present its evidence in context. And this context is invaluable, especially as it relates to the non-character purposes.
So forgive me, you have expert witnesses, at least one, who can testify regarding Ms. Richins having used up all of the available credit and liquidity, being highly leveraged in her business affairs, all of those circumstances as of January of 2022. I recall that evidence being voluminous. Am I remembering that correctly?
You are, Your Honor, and that expert opinion, though, relates back to even before the charged June 2021 mortgage frauds.
Sure.
That those mortgage frauds form a basis of her opinion. And I think she can testify voluminously to the facts of financial distress, but she cannot testify as to the defendant's knowledge that she was in financial distress, which is important for the state to prove as it relates to the pecuniary gain aggravators. We have to show that she knew she needed the money. And we can show that.
Well, I think the fact that she was out of credit and highly leveraged is sufficient for that. But
Your Honor,
I don't know that you need to prove that she was allegedly forging bank statements.
Your Honor, the fact that she was forging bank statements is the best evidence that she knew she was out of money.
I'm not sure I agree about that, but I understand your position. Okay. And it's the arc, the state's view of the arc, that you believe satisfies the either direct relationship or precipitating event interpretation from Burke regarding the otherwise connected together in their commission prong of 77-8A-1.
Yes, Your Honor. It's the arc which is in large part formed by her two motivations, pecuniary gain and the appearance of accomplishment and status. If you were to strip either of those two non-character purposes out, it's a tougher argument, but the defendant's motivation for pecuniary gain and to maintain her facade is strong and it's visible in the terms of Burke language.
And the evidence regarding her subjective misunderstanding of the actual estate plan, that comes after March 2022. There's no arguments that that's not coming in. That is, she had a subjective understanding
Your Honor,
that she would do
better
as well if Eric died during the marriage.
Correct, Your Honor. The evidence before the court from mostly the detention hearing, a little bit at the preliminary hearing, though, is that she learned that she was not a part of the estate plan other than the mandatory share. She was not a part of the estate plan on March the 6th, 3 days after Eric Richins' death.
Okay. Got it. I think I understand the state's position.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Nestor.
So the judge earlier dismissed
First
two
of all, I
lesser
would just
drug
like to
charges.
correct, I disagree that that's true. There is
Which part? I'm sorry.
evidence in the discovery that suggests that Ms. Richins was aware prior to Eric Richins' death of the changes to the estate plan, that she absolutely was aware of that. And that was even confirmed by Eric's family. So that's just not true.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that that holds any weight to what you're deciding, but I do want to correct that for the record. Also, I don't, the state just stood up and said the propensity to steal or lie is not the same as the propensity to commit a murder. Then why are they charging these charges? Why are they included in this information? If that's his argument, why are they here? They don't even meet the statutory analysis. And honestly, if you're gonna, I don't know what this arc of behavior is that he keeps referring to, but how far is this arc? Are we gonna go back and say if she shoplifted cigarettes in college, that proves she knew she was broke and she needed a rich husband that she could someday kill 20 years later?
Well, the issue before the court is the arc only goes back to June 2021.
Because they randomly picked that date? It has no connection to the case whatsoever. None.
Well, it has connection in as much as the state has shown probable cause of mortgage fraud, forgery on those days. But I understand your larger argument regarding there have to be some limitations to the idea of connected together in their commission.
Right. I mean, if you can't get past that, it's not even properly joined under the statute. So you don't ever even have to get to the 403 analysis. And they just wholly have failed to, they didn't allege it. I think, I think they're required to allege common scheme or plan in the information, use that language. That's what the statute seems to indicate. They didn't do that.
That's true.
That's the plain reading of the statute, which I know we're going back to a world where we do plain reading of statutes. So that's what it says. But regardless, I mean, I just don't think they even make it to the 403 analysis past the statute. It's not properly joined. It should be severed. I know that the attempt is a tougher haul. I do think the attempt survives the statute, but I do not believe it survives 403 or 401. And I think that what you're buying here is a lot of heartache of trying to figure out how to instruct this jury to properly analyze evidence that is not required.
Hold on.
Yeah.
If they can prove it, would you acknowledge it's relevant? And if they can't prove it, it's not prejudicial.
If they can prove the attempt?
Yeah, it's certainly relevant.
If they can prove the attempt.
Right.
If it's relevant to the aggravated murder. And then flip. I understand
If they can't prove it, well,
Yeah.
then it didn't matter.
Right. But the problem is that in order to get to the end of the game, the jury has to be exposed to a swath of prejudicial, non-probative, non-supported speculations of propensity evidence.
Well, I mean, the 403 balancing test really is the fulcrum on which this balances.
Yeah.
If they can prove it, it's prejudicial because it's relevant. Then the issue is, well, wait a minute. Is it unfairly prejudicial?
Right.
All relevant evidence is prejudicial. Otherwise, it wouldn't be relevant.
Right. Well, I mean, I do think you nailed it when you talked at the prelim about the fact that if the aggravated murder count allegations didn't exist at all, then the analysis of the attempt, right, is wholly separate, right? So, I mean, this just gets so confusing because it goes back and forth and it's all intertwined, which is one of the reasons why it's going to be so difficult for this jury to honestly and faithfully follow an instruction. Well, you can only consider this evidence for this one limited purpose.
But
I mean, how hard is that going to be?
I had not yet satisfied myself that subsequent acts were, in fact, admissible under a 404B analysis.
Right.
I've now satisfied myself with that.
Okay.
I've nailed that down.
Okay.
And so there seems to be a cogent 2 to 3 week story between February 14 and March 4 of a certain plan that didn't work, a request for something stronger, and another try that did. The danger is that the jury won't consider it just for preparation plan intent, but will take the easier, fast-thinking version of you're a violent, murderous person. You must have done it.
Yep. And I just don't, I mean, I just think, you know, we're taking a big risk that the evidence is going to shake out the way the state's saying it's going to shake out. And if they're wrong and this prejudicial information comes in and it's clearly being used in a propensity way, we're looking at mistrial, we're looking at reversal, and we're looking at a lot of problems that don't need to exist if we sever now. So that's the position we're taking.
But this is, I think, where you and I are talking past each other.
Yeah.
The problems are still going to exist if I rule the evidence is admissible.
Right. But I mean, who knows how you're going to rule it, because they've got to lay a foundation. They've got to actually
I
create
think
a
I have to
foundation.
make that decision one way or the other today.
If it's admissible,
Yes.
oh, we're not asking for that at this point.
But I think I'm required to make that determination as part of the severance
Oh.
analysis.
How you would most likely rule if it would be admissible
Right.
or not.
Is evidence regarding what happened on February 14 admissible in a trial of the ag murder charge? Yes or no? If
Right.
yes, there's no basis to sever. If
Right.
no, then it must be severed.
Right.
We're at that fork in the road.
Right. Well, I mean, things can after develop, which can affect your
Fair enough.
admissibility
Yeah, no.
decision down the road for sure.
Certainly.
I mean, we're still at the very beginnings of that, but I do, you know, I do think we're on solid ground that severing it is the safest way to ensure that this trial is fair, that it's based on actual evidence, that it's based on probative evidence and not unduly prejudicial propensity evidence. And we are asking the court to sever.
Okay. I understand your position.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're quick, just a moment.
Of course.
So again, the judges already agreed to a motion by the state to
I do
drop
just wanna,
two.
my
of the
partner
lesser
just
drug
brought up a good
charges.
point. Just throwing into the mix, which I know you've already thought about. But the fact that they've dismissed today the 2 distribution counts does weigh into this 403 and 404, well, 403 analysis for sure, and 404B, because now they're not pursuing distribution. So are they going to argue that she committed another crime, wrong, or bad act by distributing when she's no longer being charged with that? And would that be admissible? And the same analysis. So I do think the fact that they've dismissed those counts can play into your 403 and 404B analysis as it's connected to the attempt. So
Why isn't evidence of defendant securing controlled substances prior to February 14 and again prior to March 3rd evidence of a
I'm not talking,
necessary element?
I'm not
regarding
talking about
both?
the purchase. I'm talking about the distribution to him,
Well, that's also a necessary element of both those.
but they've dismissed them as of today.
They're just not going to put them on the verdict form. Whether evidence of the conduct comes in is a different story.
Well, we'll object.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's going to be there too. So I'm just throwing that out
All right.
there that it needs to be taken into consideration. So,
Understood.
yeah. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. The issue before the court is defendant's motion to sever counts, docket 677, by which defendant requests an order severing the counts in the third amended information as follows. Count 1 for aggravated murder being tried with counts 7, 8, and 11 for insurance fraud and forgery occurring in January 2022 and June 2022 and separately, in a separate trial, the attempted aggravated murder charge, count 2, being tried with or without counts 5, 6, 9, and 10. Under Utah Code 77-8A-1, subsection 1, 2 or more felonies may be charged in the same information if each offense is a separate count and if the offenses charged are A, based on the same conduct or otherwise connected together in their commission, or B, alleged to have been part of a common scheme or plan. Charges are connected in their commission when there is a direct relationship between them, often because the conduct resulting in one charge was precipitated by conduct resulting in another charge. That comes from State v. Burke, 2011 UT App 168, paragraph 21. The phrase common scheme or plan applies to crimes that involve a similar fact pattern in proximity in time. To be classified as a common plan or scheme, it is not necessary for the crimes to have been perpetrated in an absolutely identical manner, so long as the court perceives a visual connection between the two crimes. That's the Utah Court of Appeals in State versus Balfour, 2008 UT App 410, paragraph 20. Even if the court finds that the felonies charged in the information are connected together in their commission or part of a common scheme or plan, the court nonetheless needs to contend with whether the defendant or the prosecution is prejudiced by a joinder for trial together. And if the court finds that such prejudice exists, the court shall order an election of separate trials as separate counts, or provide other relief as justice requires. And to determine whether a defendant is prejudiced by joinder for trial together, the inquiry is whether evidence of the other crime would have been admissible in a separate trial. The court must analyze the reciprocal admission question under Rule 404B, as stated in State v. Burke at paragraph 26. So, step 1 is to determine whether the state can show that counts 1, 2, and 5 through 11 satisfy the standard under 77-8A-1, that is, that they're connected together in their commission or part of a common scheme or plan. The court determines that count 1, aggravated murder, and count 2, attempted aggravated murder, are part of a common scheme or plan because they involve a similar fact pattern occurring only approximately 17 days apart. In each instance, defendant allegedly purchased fentanyl from or through Carmen Lauber, allegedly administered it to Eric Richins through food or drink after purchasing it, and allegedly left Eric Richins alone, either by leaving the scene or moving to a different room. Those 3 circumstances, those 3 commonalities, are sufficient to determine that counts 1 and 2 are part of a common scheme or plan. Defendant does not dispute that counts 7, 8, and 11, that is, insurance fraud and forgery in January 2022, and insurance fraud in June of 2022, allegedly, also are connected together in their commission with the aggravated murder charge. So counts 7, 8, and 11 also satisfy the requirements for joinder under 77-8A-1, subsection 1. The court is not persuaded that counts 5, 6, 9, and 10, that is mortgage fraud and related alleged forgery in June and August of 2021, meet the statutory requirement for joinder. They are not part of a common scheme or plan with the criminal homicide or the attempted homicide in March and February of 2022, respectively. And while the state argues that they are part of a direct relationship or form precipitating events for the attempted murder and ag murder that occurred 9 months later. Court's simply not persuaded of that. There is too much temporal distance and too much dissimilarity. They're too different from the events that occurred in February and March of 2022. The court determines that counts 5, 6, 9, and 10 do not meet the standard for joinder under 77-8A-1, subsection 1. And even if they do, in the alternative, if an appellate court rules that they do, court's not persuaded that those 4 counts survive the 404B and 403 analysis for reasons I'll get to in a moment. Turning back to counts 1 and 2, aggravated murder and attempted aggravated murder. Having determined that those counts are properly joined in the information as part of a common scheme or plan, the court must next determine under subsection 4A of 77-8A-1 whether defendant would be prejudiced by a joinder of those 2 counts for trial. That is, the court must analyze the reciprocal admission question under Rule 404B. Under Rule 404B, evidence of a crime, wrong, or other act is not admissible to prove a person's character in order to show that on a particular occasion, the person acted in conformity with that character. However, this same evidence of a crime, wrong, or other act may be admissible for another purpose, a non-character purpose, such as proving intent, preparation, or plan. The court rules that evidence regarding the attempted aggravated murder on February 14, 2022, particularly in light of text messages that came after that date, in which defendant allegedly texts her paramour to the effect of, "I wish he would go away," or "if my husband would just go away." And on February 26, approximately, in which she contacted her source of controlled substances and stated she needed something stronger. Evidence of the attempted aggravated murder on February 14, 2022 is admissible for a non-character purpose of showing intent to kill Eric Richins and a preparation and plan on how to do so. Having made that determination, the court must consider whether the probative value of that evidence outweighs the danger of things like unfair prejudice of that evidence. And the court rules that it does. First, under Rule 403, the court must determine whether the danger of unfair prejudice substantially outweighs the probative value of the evidence. It's not a simple 50-50. And here, the danger of unfair prejudice, specifically of the jury drawing a propensity or character-based inference rather than using the evidence of the attempt to consider intent, preparation, and plan with respect to the aggravated murder, is not substantially outweighed, is not sufficient to outweigh the probative value of the evidence. Given the similarity in the circumstantial evidence regarding the intent, given the, in this court's view, connecting tissue of the defendant's alleged text messages between February 14 and March 3, and given the events on March 3, the court rules that the jury is most likely to make findings that the events of February 14 show defendant's intent and are probative of her preparation and plan to kill Eric Richins. The jury is unlikely to draw a general character or propensity-based inference that defendant's the person that tends to kill people, so she must have done it in March 3. The similarities between the events on February 14 and March 3 are too great. The temporal connection is too close. The connective tissue of defendant's text messages are too probative for the court to conclude that the probative value of the attempt evidence on the aggravated murder count is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice. So, under Rule 404B and Rule 403, evidence regarding the attempt is admissible in a trial regarding the aggravated murder charge. Now we need to turn to the reciprocal. Would evidence of the subsequent aggravated murder be admissible in a trial regarding the attempt? It can't be relevant to show preparation and plan because you can't prepare and plan for things that have already occurred. But it can show intent. And for similar reasons, similarity between the events, the connective tissue of the text messages, evidence tending to show that defendant killed Eric Richins by administering illicit fentanyl on March 3rd and 4th, 2022 is highly probative of what her intent was on February 14, 2022, having secured fentanyl and allegedly administering it to Eric Richins on that day in a sandwich she bought for him. And that probative value regarding her intent in the lead up to February 14, 2022, and on that day is not substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice. So, evidence regarding the aggravated murder on March 3 and 4, 2022 is admissible in a trial regarding count 2, the attempted aggravated murder. Having walked through that analysis, the court denies defendant's motion to sever counts 1 and 2 from each other. Court rules that counts 1, 2, 7, 8, and 11 shall be joined for trial. The court has already ruled that counts 5, 6, 9, and 10 do not meet the statutory standard for joinder, but in the event my statutory interpretation and application on a point is incorrect, the court rules that under rules 404B and 403, evidence of counts 5, 6, 9, and 10, that is mortgage fraud and forgery in June and August of 2021, the probative value of that evidence to show the elements of counts 1, 2, 7, 8, 11 is lower and is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice. Because in that instance, given the temporal distance and the dissimilarity between the crimes, the court determines that the danger of the jury defaulting to a character-based or propensity-based inference that defendant is a liar and a cheat, so she must have committed more crimes in January through March of 2022 is simply too high. There isn't a sufficient, the probative value of the evidence underlying counts 5, 6, 9, and 10 is just not great enough with respect to counts 1, 2, 7, 8, and 11. So even if they meet the statutory requirement for joinder, under subsection 4A of 77-8A-1, the court rules that the prejudice to defendant of joining counts 5, 6, 9, and 10 for trial with the remaining counts is too high. Defendant's motion to sever counts 5, 6, 9, and 10 is granted. Ms. Nestor, any questions?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Bloodworth?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. All right. Brady, do you have that on the minutes?
So real quick, the motion to sever the attempted murder, the first time she tried to poison him, on Valentine's Day 2022 from the time he died with the second poisoning, March 3rd, 2022. The defense was asking for
Doing
two
okay?
separate trials. That
Okay, let's
motion
keep going. Where would you like to go next?
denied.
Your Honor, we could probably dispense with the motion to seat 12 jurors fairly quickly.
Okay. Is there any record you want to make on that besides your
Greg
brief?
Scortis,
No,
Utah
Your Honor,
Court
I
Attorney
just,
has
I attached the
joined
Utah
in,
Association of Criminal Defense Lawyer
Greg, just to
amicus
get you up
brief
to
that
date, they
much more beautifully said
state filed a motion
than I could say.
to
So I
remove,
just cribbed it and
drop two of
attached
the
it.
lesser
And for all of
drug
those
charges,
reasons,
which
we
was
would ask
granted, and the judge
in a
just
case as serious
denied
as this that
the
we be
motion
allowed to
to
seat 12
sever the
jurors
attempted
in the
murder
hopes that
from
eventually the
the
United States Supreme
first
Court
degree
will
murder.
determine that to be a
So that's where
fundamental
we're at
right.
right now.
I do concede that is not the current state of the law in Utah at this time.
Ms. Nestor, Ms. Lewis, Mr. Ramos, I took this issue seriously and read the amicus brief and read Justice Gorsuch's withering critique of the Williams versus Florida decision. The state of Utah may be on the wrong side of history on this one. It seems likely that it will be. But when they gave me this robe, I took an oath to uphold the law as it currently exists. And the status quo of United States Supreme Court jurisprudence is that a 12-person panel is not a necessary ingredient of trial by jury. And a state's refusal to impanel 12 jurors does not violate a defendant's Sixth Amendment rights as applied to the states through the 14th Amendment. Given that pronouncement, which is still good law, notwithstanding Justice Gorsuch's thought-provoking analysis, this court is required to follow Utah law regarding the size of the jury in this case. And based upon Article 1, Section 10 of the Utah Constitution and Section 78B-1-1041B of the Utah Code, a jury in a non-capital first-degree felony aggravated murder case is comprised of 8 persons. I take the motion seriously. I look forward to seeing the law change, but until it does, I'm required to deny it. Defendant's motion to seat 12 jurors, docket 668, is respectfully denied. You want to talk about jury selection next, or
Yes.
well, here we can do another quick one. Stipulated motion to expand jury veneer to include Summit and Salt Lake County, docket 659. It's stipulated. I confirmed with the powers that be in the mothership in Salt Lake County that this is possible. As a practical matter, I think that means summoning an equal number of Salt Lake County jurors and Summit County jurors on each day of jury selection. They'd be randomized each day. We'd be creating a separate randomized list from each county 4 times, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We don't have to make the decision now, but I'm going to need some guidance on numbers. How many you want from each county each day? So give that some thought with the state, let me know. But otherwise, the stipulated motion to expand the jury veneer to include Summit and Salt Lake County, docket 659, is granted. Mr. Bloodworth, anything on that?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you want to go to jury selection next?
Ms. Lewis is going to do that.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Well, Your Honor, we have stipulated with the state that jury voir dire should be in person.
I know you have, but it doesn't mean you're right.
Well,
And it doesn't mean you can escape the showing of extraordinary circumstances.
I thought it did. I thought we were good.
Talk to me about constitutional issues first. I had a law clerk look at this for days. We have been unable to find a reported decision in which virtual jury selection, which admittedly has really only existed since 2021, probably maybe late 2020, has been found unconstitutional. There are two decisions. I think it's probably overstating it to say it was found constitutional, but a constitutional challenge was not sustained. Are you aware of any law saying it's unconstitutional?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. And I think you're right. I mean, it's such a new area. We have gone back to in-person in most things.
Not in the judicial branch, though, which is the interesting thing.
It is
So
interesting.
where the confrontation clause does not apply, we in Utah and many states across the country are doing a ton of work virtually. We amended rules to preserve a victim and a party's ability to request appearance by virtual means. Now, where the confrontation clause applies, doesn't work, right? But the confrontation clause does not apply at jury selection.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. I do think that we are waiving defendants' rights to be present in these hearings when we decide we're going to proceed virtually. The defendant has a right to be present at every hearing.
Right. So sound this out with me. I tried to give some thought to this. Preliminary hearings, right?
Yes.
Confrontation clause does not apply as a matter of law. So the defendant does not have a right to have witnesses at a preliminary hearing appear in person. Are you and I in agreement about that?
That's the state of the law, yes.
Okay. I'm not asking you to agree that it's good policy. That is the state of the law.
Yes.
The defendant has the right to be in the courtroom at sentencing. But I'm not aware of any law that says a survivor, say, of domestic violence is required to speak in person in the courtroom when providing victim input or impact statement at sentencing. Are you?
No, but I think our point is that a defendant always has a right to be present at every step of the proceeding.
But there's no dispute that Ms. Richins is going to be in the courtroom with me and all of you during jury selection. The issue is whether or not the jurors are going to be in the courtroom.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And we've put ourselves in a position, I think, since COVID, where we're going to see more litigation on this issue. And we haven't seen everything as to that yet. I see problems coming down the road. I do think that, for example, in a preliminary hearing, we've seen some movement in Utah where recently we went from,
I know.
Yeah, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And as that moves forward, so for example, if the accuser is present at a preliminary hearing, then clearly I think the defense should have and would have an objection. Now, maybe at this point in the law would not win that, but there is an objection to not being able to confront your accuser in person.
Well, at least the current state of the law is you simply don't have that right at a prelim.
You don't right now.
All right. And
I think it's
I'm
a
not asking
problem.
you to.
Yes.
I'm not asking you to agree that it's good policy, but am I correct that to the best of your knowledge, there is no reported decision determining that conducting jury selection where the jurors are in remote locations and appearing for voir dire by virtual means is unconstitutional? It's contrary to the Sixth Amendment.
No, I do not think there is at this time.
Okay.
I think we may see a change. I think the federal courts have seen that, so they're not allowing it anymore. Federal courts are insisting that jury selection be in person, because I do think the newness of this happening in the future, we might see again a change in law where then we end up back on a case such as this one and others where that wasn't allowed. And so I make the argument to preserve the record.
I understand. Talk to me about extraordinary circumstances. So if I'm not presented with authority sufficient to rule that virtual jury selection is a violation of the Sixth Amendment as applied to the states through the 14th, but you're still within your rights to say there are extraordinary circumstances in this case, Judge, that weigh in favor of the court exercising its discretion and requiring the jurors to appear in person. Talk to me about that.
I don't think there could really be any more extraordinary circumstances than what we have in this case. We're looking at a jury pool, probably from both Summit and Salt Lake, that are going to have knowledge of the facts in this case. Everybody has knowledge of the facts of this case. Having someone on a screen where we can't see them looking at the players in person, where we can't judge what might be going through their mind. It's so much harder to judge someone on a screen when we're asking questions about, can you be fair, when they are not sitting in the same room as the defendant. It's a lot easier when you're at home in your living room or kitchen with who knows what's going on behind you to say, of course I can be fair, than if you're sitting, right here or in chambers across from Ms. Richins.
May I push you on this a little bit? I've thought a lot about this. Look at this room right now. And with respect, this is kind of a mild version of what this case attracts. There is a television camera behind you in the jury box. I will bet you a steak dinner that this entire hearing will be replayed and analyzed on numerous YouTube channels before the end of the day.
Happening right now.
Honestly expect normal human beings to be forthcoming under these circumstances in person?
I think they're going to be more for two things. One, yes, I think in person, people are going to be more forthcoming. I don't care if there's a camera in the room. It's harder to say something that is untrue to a defendant's face. Secondly, I think in person, we will be able to judge better if a person is being forthcoming. Maybe they're not going to be as forthcoming, but when you're sitting there in the room with them and you can see all of their body language, then that will be easier for the attorneys to make a judgment call on who should be on this jury and who shouldn't be on this jury. This case, I think it's absolutely essential that the attorneys in this case get to look at the jurors all at the same time, not on a screen where we only have so many at a time. It's important to see when we ask questions how another juror is reacting to the answer, how juror 22 is reacting to the answer of juror 3.
You recognize that I'm probably not going to let you do that.
Well, the court's going to be asking certain questions.
I'll ask some general questions and ask people to raise their hands in response, but my practice is to not allow questioning of entire panels to prevent or guard against the danger of one potential juror saying something that prejudices the entire panel that we can't unring.
There are still things that can be seen when people are talking and they're all in the same room. Yes, I understand that more sensitive issues may be more directly related to prejudice based on the media, won't be in front of everybody. But as you watch a panel of jurors throughout jury selection and how they are responding, their body language towards the state, towards the defendant, it is essential. And we're talking about an individual who is charged with the most serious crime an individual can be charged with. That's why I'm making the constitutional argument to preserve the record. And I think that the circumstances could not be more extraordinary. I mean, the reason to do this on WebEx is really for the convenience of the jurors. That's the main reason to do this. And anybody who's picked as a juror on this case is going to be extremely inconvenienced. And if they can't be inconvenienced for the day to come in while we pick the jury, then they're not the people we want on this jury. And that's something else that we can tell when they're in person. The people that fight coming in person, the people that maybe don't show up because it's in person, those are not people that we want on the jury. And we are not going to see that or have that ability to determine that by having them on a camera. I know it can be done. I've done it once and it worked out fine in a run-of-the-mill case where nobody knew anything and the facts were pretty simple and it was a 3-day trial. But in a case like this, I think we need these people in front of us before we decide who we're going to put on this jury who's going to sit for 4 weeks on a case of this nature. And doing that there's so much potential for error to get jurors that are not appropriate for this kind of trial because we don't have them here in this room. And I think that is, I've only had one other case that had this amount of publicity. And having the jurors in the room while we picked that jury was, I can't even imagine, it was essential to have them there in the room and to have them in person when we asked the individual questions, when they were not, when I say in person, when we had them one at a time without the other jurors, to watch them answer those questions in front of a defendant that in that case, my other case, was considered a frightening individual, was absolutely essential. And the state agrees, maybe not for the same reasons, clearly not for the same reasons on all of it, which is why it's partially stipulated too, that this is the sort of case where we need these people in front of us if we're going to pick an appropriate jury.
Let me hear from from the state if they want to say anything, and I'll make sure.
Gunnar,
Okay.
Can I just wanted to throw something out that happened with Mr. Ramos and I a couple weeks ago. Mr. Ramos and I tried a case down in West Jordan 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was a small case, and not small to our client at all, but in terms of short, it was only going to be a day and a half. And we did a remote jury selection. And in the space of, I think it ended up taking us 8 hours to pick a jury. We had multiple occasions where we had jurors who dropped off and could not reconnect, and we had to pause and wait for them to reconnect.
Or just strike.
Correct. We had situations where we had technical difficulty where the jurors couldn't hear the judge, and that caused us about 45 minutes. Then we had another technical difficulty.
I'm loath to ask whose courtroom you were in. Don't tell me.
It was Judge Dane. Not his fault. He did a great job. But we had multiple technical difficulties that were no fault of any of the parties. We were all being as diligent as we could, but it slowed us down probably 2 hours. And that was on one day with a much smaller venire, a much smaller setting, only,
Ms. Nestor.
Yeah. I
If
just
I
wanted to bring that up.
never done this before,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might put more weight on your experience in that courtroom.
Yeah.
We've done this a lot up here.
Yeah.
On first-degree felony cases.
Yeah. I'm just throwing that out there as something to consider, that as advanced as we like to think our technology is, it invariably fails and did cause us pretty significant delays, and we were all doing our very best to problem solve and troubleshoot. So I just wanted to bring that out there.
Let me be transparent about another concern. To the extent there are extraordinary circumstances in this case, the extreme level of media attention is the extraordinary circumstance.
Yes.
Violent acts happen frequently in Summit County. We try first-degree felony cases with some regularity. That's this. The facts of the case are not extraordinary. It's the extreme level of media attention. And I use media broadly. It's everything from legacy media, the big 3 TV stations, to new media in the form of blogs, video logs, people that are just live tweeting stuff as it goes. My ability to protect potential jurors from examination, harassment, outside influence, if they're going through the bottleneck that is the front door and the driveway of this courthouse, is zero. I have no ability to protect their identity when they're out there assembling in mass. When they're on screen, I can block the media from attending jury selection, and there won't be any physical opportunity to know who these people are, take pictures of their license plates, watch them come and go.
We did this in person forever until 2020.
But just because we didn't have it then doesn't mean we should miss an opportunity to do it now.
I think that.
And moreover, this level of media attention through multiple media outlets is a relatively new thing.
They brought the jury in person in the Trump trial.
They did, but did they allow any public access to that jury selection? They did not.
Well, I guess that would get us into another area that I don't know what has to be allowed in terms of jury selection, in terms of the press. I would
I'll
imagine.
be picking a First Amendment fight with the media on that, but that's not your water to carry unless you have a position on it. But all I'm saying
water
is
to carry,
there are
though,
benefits in terms of maintaining the integrity of the jury selection process to having more control rather than less.
but these people who are going to be picked, they're going to be coming into this courtroom every single day.
Correct.
And we're not going to be able to do that. And I think the inconvenience for the people who don't get picked is not anywhere near the level of Ms. Richins' rights in this case and what she is facing in this case. And if we're going to have people come in here, and there are people that are very nervous to be on a jury when there's no press. Makes them very uncomfortable to be on a jury. And if we have them here in person, we're going to be able to see which people are absolutely not going to be able to handle the media in this case. We're not going to be able to tell that as easily on a screen. And I think that's really important. I mean, how many alternates are we going to have in this case? If we're going to pick a jury that's going to last 4 weeks in this trial,
It's 3, but okay.
we hope.
12 days.
Okay, we'll see. I'm not
That's what you asked for. If that, you need to change that, you got to tell me soon. But nonetheless, I understand your concern. Certainly. I mean, 4 alternates would not be unreasonable.
Oh, at least 4. But we want to pick the people up front that can handle what it's going to take to be a juror in this case. And having them here in person is going to help us do that. And having them here to question in person about their knowledge of the case. It is so different when we start questioning them about what they know about the case, if they can be fair, to have them sitting in front of you. I mean, you've tried cases. You've got to understand what that means in a high profile case. And it's not the same. It's just not the same on a screen and it's true. I mean, yeah, maybe the technology is good. That doesn't mean the technology of all the jurors on the other end is good. So what, we just throw them off because their technology's bad? Just strike them? Maybe they would be excellent jurors. That's not right. We need these people here. And I think the state agrees on this. And I don't think it's that big of an inconvenience. And if some people are inconvenienced for 1 day, I think it's worth it. It's worth it. They need to be inconvenienced for 1 day because we need to serve justice in this case. And where that's going to start, justice starts is with juries. Is important to this case as every witness that gets on that stand up front. And this jury selection, it has to be in person. If it's not, I think we're starting this case out on a level that is going to result in an unfairness all the way down the line. I feel very strongly about this, if you didn't notice.
I'm sitting here thinking, though, that the argument you're making would apply to any first-degree felony case.
No, it wouldn't, because not every first-degree felony case does everybody who sits down there already think they know what happened. And in this case, they all are going to think that.
An issue of me. I hear you saying virtual jury selection simply is insufficient. Partiality, right?
In this situation where they already are going to think they know everything about the case. When they know nothing about the case, I don't love it, but I think it can work. In a situation where they think they know everything about the case, we need them in person of who can really be fair and who can't be.
We previously discussed the concept of using a case-specific and detailed juror questionnaire to potentially strike people that identified as knowing something about the case or having heard of it before. Is that still something that's being contemplated?
Yeah, we need both. We need both. What someone puts in writing is not the same as what they say. Sitting however you're going to do your chamber in the jury box when we ask them these questions. And this is going to be a lot of questions. And you can figure out a lot with the person sitting in prison or another. I think it's a serious concern. It's not a concern in a case that doesn't have any publicity. There are people that are going to want to be on this jury to convict or are going to want to be on this jury to acquit. And it's going to be so much more difficult to see that and figure that out when we're rolling through Zoom Brady Bunch screen. We need to have them here.
So walk me through the practicalities of what you'd have if they were here.
Jury selection begins when a person who knows that jury walks into this room. And
so you'd have 20 or 30 in a group at a time sitting in the gallery.
Yes.
We'd ask some general questions.
Correct.
We'd send them all out to a different room. You'd have no idea what they were doing while they were in there, just like the old days. They'd have their devices, just like the old days.
They're allowed their devices during selection in state court.
Historically, I mean, we can take them away if you want. But I mean, this is what I'm trying to sound out with you, is if you're actually concerned about all this stuff, we'd have to.
Actually concerned about all of this. And I actually thought that they did not get their devices during selection, so they can't be in the other room Googling about the case. And we would ask that they not.
We've been on the honor system here for years and years.
I guess we would be asking that that not be the case in this.
Okay.
In this one.
And then ask them questions one at a time.
Yes. And we also know
Although
that when
I suppose if we do it, whether we do it online or in person, I'm not going to prejudge a motion to say, hey, we need to do attorney conducted voir dire to an entire panel at a time. I have never done that for the reasons I've explained, but the first district gets away with it routinely. And so I'll keep an open mind about that, but we can accommodate that both in person and virtually.
Well, another thing we can't accommodate virtually. So we have how many on the screen at once? How do you know the other people aren't talking to someone else in the room, their spouse?
Well, you don't know that next door.
They don't take away their phones.
Sure, but they can talk to each other. I mean, this is something we've lived with for decades. That concern did not suddenly arise in 2021.
Well, no, that's correct. I mean, I suppose they can talk to each other. I mean, there's more things we could do to control that here in person. I mean, if you have a deputy in the room to make sure they're not talking to each other about the case. I mean, this isn't your typical case, Judge. It just isn't. It's nowhere close to your typical first degree case. This case has more publicity than, well, it has as much publicity as almost any case that we've seen going on over the last 5 years.
Ms. Lewis, are we going to sequester the jurors?
Do I get to choose?
I mean, you're going to make a motion to sequester the jurors. It's an honest question. Because if the answer is no, we're all going to have to live with some uncertainty here.
We haven't discussed that.
Fair enough.
I mean, I haven't got that far in the process in my head. Is that something that I think we would seriously discuss as a team? Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I know that's a last resort and people hate it. So, but I think it's different though, even in the sense that once we pick the people, we're picking people that we have a feel for when we see them in person. So if we don't sequester them, we know them better than we're going to know them over that screen. So, you know, would we consider that? Maybe. Would I have a greater desire to file that motion if we don't pick them in person? Absolutely.
Okay. I understand. Let me see if the state has anything to add. And then if you think of anything else, I'm happy to give you more time.
Your Honor, regarding the extraordinary circumstances, I agree that the extraordinary circumstances here is the media coverage. Let me underscore, please, 2 points. The first is the state will want to measure somebody's reaction to the media coverage. And the state has to be in the present, or the potential juror has to be in the presence of the media coverage for us to measure that reaction.
That is a tough row to hoe. am simply sitting here today not persuaded that a lay person summoned here against their will is going to be forthcoming at any length when a television camera is pointed at their face. It's just not reasonable to assume.
And Your Honor, that's exactly why we want to observe them to determine when they're in the same room as the television camera, if they alter their behavior at all. That is important for us to know, because it goes to the second point.
But my concern is that you will not receive the information that you need to make intelligent use of peremptory challenges and motions for strike for cause if the people don't open up and feel comfortable in this idea that they're going to feel more comfortable or be more forthcoming in this setting as compared to in their kitchen or their office. I just have a real hard time getting there.
Your Honor, I think that analysis more than anything goes to the jurors that Ms. Lewis referenced that either want to get sat in order to convict or in order to quit, which is a function of the extraordinary media presence, which is part of the extraordinary circumstances. Your Honor, we will best be able to suss those jurors out if we can observe their entire body, their entire reactions, their entire movements in the presence of the camera.
Yeah, we're conflating two issues today, so I don't want to rule on more than I have to.
So let me real quickly jump to the constitutional argument. The state's not taking a position on it. But as a pragmatic view, different than the 12-juror motion, which is based on settled law, I think we can all agree that this isn't settled right now. In fact, it's not really even tested. I don't know why we would take a chance, not only in this particular case, but in probably most of the first-degree felony cases here.
Why do we take the chance in second-degree felony cases?
At some point, well, I might say all of them actually,
right.
but if we're going to draw a line, sometimes we're in the line drawing business. First-degree felony might be a good line to draw there. Thank you, sir.
When do you need to know? Let me ask it more sharply. If I deny your motion, how much time do you need to get a petition for an interlocutory appeal in? I got to work backwards from that. You'd want the certainty on this. So earlier, the better.
Well, we may want to ask that question after our next motion argument.
The trial date isn't being asked to be moved, right?
No, not at this moment.
Yeah.
Interlocutory appeal could change that, I suppose.
Gosh.
There wouldn't be a stay. All right, let's do this. Let's just take a break until noon. Let everybody use the restroom, stretch their legs. We'll come back at noon. Thank you.
They are taking a break till noon. It is 11:34 there, and we're being joined by criminal defense attorney Greg Skordas. For those who do not know, Greg was representing the family of Eric Richins. Are you still doing that, Greg?
Just helping them in the sense of a victim advocate. I'm not the attorney for them in any sense.
Okay, so he's, as you just heard, working as a victim's advocate. Greg is based in Salt Lake City. First of all, Greg, there must have been 17,000 comments about Judge Mrazek's mellifluous voice. He has quite the command of the. He looks like a young guy, but he's a very accomplished judge. I take it.
Oh yeah, very much so. And he's part of the 3rd District Court, which includes Summit County, which is Park City. That court is so small that he's really just up there by himself. I think he's probably been a judge for about 10 years. I've actually had trials with him myself. I'm appearing before him at 2:00 today, so I don't know if he's going to be done with this hearing yet. But I have a hearing with him at 2.
Oh, there you go. Look at that. It's a small world. COE, please let me know if my beloved Ethel Bug Johnson, our boxer, is safe and sound. COE was having trouble locating her. So, Greg, there are a lot of things being discussed during this hearing. The judge, the state filed a motion last week basically saying, let's get rid of 2 of the controlled substance charges, and the judge immediately agreed to that. What's the thinking on behalf of the state for getting rid of a couple of those charges?
Boy, I don't know, Joel, unless they thought it was just going to clog it up or take more time than they needed, or maybe confuse the jury. I was surprised that the state would give away anything in this case. But yeah, they originally there was an 11 count information. They've dismissed now counts 3 and 4, which are distribution of a controlled substance. And I don't know the logic. I really don't. And but obviously the defense doesn't object to any time the state dismisses counts. Certainly they were the least serious out of the 11 charges. So I don't know that is going to make a difference in the case. And maybe they just thought it would add another couple days to a trial that they didn't really need.
There you go. So obviously the kind of the big issue so far, and then, I mean, I guess there's a few, the jurors too, but the defense was asking to basically sever the charges or the counts. So the judge heard all the arguments related to this. There was according to the state, there was an attempted poisoning on Valentine's Day, 2022, and then another attempt that sadly worked on March 3rd. So it's like a difference of literally less than 4 weeks. But the defense was saying, look, this first case, there's no real evidence. It's just going to prejudice jury in favor of the state. Ultimately, he said no go, not severing it. But I understand that they're doing their job. But was that like was it too big an ask? I assume it was.
Yeah, and what the judge effectively did, Joel, is he severed the counts 5, 6, 9, and 10, and I was reviewing those as he was doing that, which are acts that occurred far enough after the homicide, the insurance fraud, the forgery, and whatnot, that he said those are somewhat unrelated and would prejudice the jury. But everything that happened up and until, including the attempted homicide, which was a month or so before the homicide, he's going to allow in. So I think that seems to be his break, is that things that happen up and until the murder are going to come in as a part of that murder case. Things that happen significantly after, we're talking about June or July, which would have been, 3 months after the homicide. That's a separate case. It doesn't mean they're dismissed. They're just going to be tried in a separate trial, separate jury, separate set of witnesses and whatnot. If I were to simplify what he did, it seems to be the sort of before and after.
Okay. The next issue that came up was the defense asking for a 12 jury panel. The judge denied that. It's going to be 8 jurors. Is this typical in Salt Lake City?
Yeah, that's how we do it in Utah, Joel. And I know that that's unusual. And the judge said, we're not on the right side of history. But in Utah, a misdemeanor trial typically has 4 to 6 jurors, and a felony trial has 8. The exception to that is a death penalty case. And where this case, they are not seeking the death penalty. It's still a capital case, and it can still carry up to life in prison. But since it's not a death penalty case anymore, under Utah law, she's not entitled to 12 jurors. The defense is saying, well, it's such a serious case, we should really look at the 12-member jury. But that's not the way we do it in Utah, and it's not the way we've ever done it in Utah. I mean, I've practiced for 42 years, and it's always been an 8-member jury on cases, even murder cases. Like I say, the only exception is a death penalty case. And when you've got the death penalty on the table, our United States Constitution and our Supreme Court has decided that you're entitled to 12 jurors But less than that, it's not a problem so long as you're not seeking to take someone's life.
And how many alternates will be on that panel?
That remains to be seen, but given a probably 4-week trial, I would imagine they could have as many as 4 to 8 alternate. You may have 16 jurors sitting there, only 8 of which are ultimately going to deliberate. But I would expect that there'll be at least one alternate for every week that they expect this trial is going to go.
That's interesting. Who is this best guest? This best guest is a criminal defense attorney, a former public defender out of Salt Lake City. You just heard he's been practicing law for 40 years, which is more than some of you have been alive. So he knows what he is talking about. Then they got on to this other issue, which I thought was really interesting. It was a little tough for me at first to follow, but the defense is asking for like the jury venire for the whole voir dire process to happen in person. But then the judge said, look right behind you. There's a camera. This is going to be super high profile. This was weird to me because it's always been done in person. If I understood it correctly, this judge wants to do the voir dire over Zoom. Is that right?
Yeah. And in fact, it has always been done in person until 2020 with COVID. Then we went to a virtual jury selection. I heard one of the lawyers say that she's done one. I've done probably 10 or 12 virtual jury selections. They're not as interesting. They're not as fun. I agree that it's better to look them in the eye, but I don't know that you gain much by doing that. And I think the judge is saying, look, that's what we're doing. It's what we've been doing in Utah. It's worked out well. And there's no reason why you can't continue to do that in a case like this. That may change, but right now the judge is saying, given the venire, which is probably going to have 100 individuals, and now he's including Salt Lake County, which, by the way, it's only about 30 miles from my office here in Salt Lake City to the court there in Summit County. So it's not like people are traveling a long way. But yeah, he'll have half his jury venire, the panel, the people that will ultimately be who we select from Salt Lake County, and half from Summit County, which is where the crimes alleged to have occurred. But it'll be virtual. It's worked in the past, and I've seen it work. I don't have any complaints about it, but I can understand the defense saying, we have the right to look them in the eye. They're using the confrontation clause, which the Constitution says you have the right to confront your accusers and confront the evidence. It doesn't say you have the right to confront the jury. And that's where I think the judge drew the line that, confrontation doesn't mean you get to look the jurors in the eye, any more than you get to look at them like you and I are right now. It's a good way to sort of get a feel for somebody. But the defense is saying, I want to see their body language. I want to see this and that. I just don't think the judge is buying that argument. He doesn't seem to be too keen on it.
Yeah, that to me, that's really interesting. The whole world changed with the pandemic. I mean,
absolutely.
You can report the news. The COE loved it. You don't have to leave the house to report the news. HB Girl saying hi from X. So for those who do not know, we are now simultaneously streaming on YouTube and X, a platform that I won't comment on, but it's a strange platform. But Myron, my man Myron, I have questions from her mother to me. She's a suspect to me. Greg, for those who don't know, Kouri Richens' own mother's either wife or partner, she died under suspicious circumstances. Do you know if there's any investigation moving forward to now review that case in light of the fact of what Kouri is now accused of?
I know that they were looking at it, Joel, and that's a good question. There may be, it may be so long. There's certainly not a statute of limitations problem because statute of limitations does not apply on homicide cases. Nonetheless, that case would be very difficult to prove. You'd almost have to exhume the body and show a cause of death or a manner of death that may not be available anymore. If you can imagine exhuming a body after several years of being buried. I don't know that the state has a lot of appetite to chase mommy around for what appears to be, and again, she's presumed innocent, of course, another homicide, very similar in facts and whatnot. I think the state's focusing on Kouri Richins right now.
Yeah. So, Greg, I know you can't give much detail, but their three boys, they're with the Richins family? Can you tell us how they're doing?
By all accounts, Joel, they're doing incredibly well. They're very well cared for. Their life is going on as you would the best you would hope in terms of schooling, in terms of family, in terms of other things that young men at that age would be expected to enjoy. They're enjoying those things in their lives right now.
Don't ask me, ask Greg. How long do we think this hearing will go? It started at 11:30 your time, Greg. You've got a hearing in front of him at 2 your time, which is 4 our time. It's tough to do the math, but they still have to decide whether she's going to be allowed out on bail, which I highly doubt. But how much longer do you think this goes?
I don't know why he took the break when he did, unless he's expecting it to go a little bit longer. I mean, if this judge is thinking we've got about 10 or 15 more minutes, he'd probably roll ahead. That makes me think he's probably got at least a half an hour or so, or maybe just everybody felt like it was time to take a break. But yeah, there may be other motions as well. There were a number of things filed. He's covered a lot today. I mean, this judge is really quite thorough, and he got through a lot. And you could tell from his rulings that he had already thought a lot of these things out. He had already cited to the code and to case law and whatnot. So he'd done his homework beforehand. I imagine he's done that on the remaining issues, but he's got to hear both sides out and let them make their argument. And we'll see what he does on the detention issue.
Leo Wren, how long is the trial supposed to last? The judge said he's expecting to last about 4 weeks. This is obviously a high-profile murder trial set to begin April 28th. I know judges like to project a little bit more time. Do you think it really goes 4 weeks, Greg?
That's a great question, and especially the way you phrased it, Joel. I think he's being very conservative and or liberal, maybe is the word. He's given them way more time than they probably need to make sure that nobody's feeling rushed or anything like that. But this is not a 4-week trial, in my opinion. And I've done murder cases from both sides as a prosecutor and a defense attorney. I've done death penalty cases from both sides, and this is not a death penalty case. If it was, yeah, 4 weeks. But with that off the table, this is probably going to go somewhat shorter than that.
And that would the 4 weeks would include jury selection, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Oh, okay. Final question from now, and then I think we should all take a little break ourselves. The judge is going to continue this hearing at the top of the hour. That's about 13 minutes away. But the judge did ask the defense, do you plan to file a motion for sequestration for the jurors? She kind of stumbled over her words, got a little nervous, and said she didn't quite know yet. Obviously, there's fears that with such a high-profile case, the jurors will see something. Do you think that these jurors do get sequestered when it's all said and done?
No, I can't imagine anything like that, Joel. That would be so difficult to tell, 12, 15 people, you can't go home for 4 weeks. You can't. I mean, the judge will give very strict instructions at the end of every day of trial. Do not talk about this case. Don't read anything about it. Don't talk to your family. That's what we do. That's what we do across the entire country, and it works. And if a juror comes back and says, hey, by the way, I watched a news clip on this, then you bump them off of the jury and you go to one of the alternates. But we expect jurors will pay attention to the facts that are in front of them at the trial. We expect that they will not go into their own research or Google or watch news media about the case, and that they'll wait until the trial's done and make their decision. Generally, I mean, I've only done this for 42 years, but generally that seems to be working out.
So here we are about 11 minutes away. By the way, Greg does this out of the kindness of his heart. Hopefully one day we can repay him in some way, but he has amazing legal analysis. He's in this area and he is with us, but it's if Greg has to go, he's got a hearing after all, I understand. But Greg, we're going to take a little 10-minute break here ourselves. Once this gets cracking again, we will be back. And a reminder, 2 more shows today. 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. Ruth Markell is here. We'll have to figure out what to do if this is still going on. We'll have to make a game time decision. Secondly, 7 p.m. Eastern tonight, Suzanne Simpson. She is a missing mother. The husband just charged with murder Obviously, since she is missing, there is no body. She's presumed to be dead. We'll have the geo profiler coming on talking about how they will search for her, continue to search for her, as well as a prosecutor and a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney to discuss that at 7:00. Greg, I can't let you go without asking you this. Do you believe in aliens and or UFOs?
Neither.
Neither. There you go.
I've never seen one. I have no reason to believe in one. I don't believe in the Yeti or the abominable snowman or any of that stuff. There may be a Loch Ness monster, but that's about all I'll give them.
Yeah, there you go. Well, tomorrow, oh boy, we have 666 likes. That's bad. But tomorrow, the United States Congress is going to have another hearing on what they call UAPs now, which is UFOs, but unidentified aerial phenomenon. And so people asked us to cover it. I already got confirmation from our friend Vinny Adams, who is basically a ufologist in the UK. He said he would join. He's going to be watching live. So I think we might take that tomorrow at 11:30. I believe it starts Eastern time. We'll let you know for sure, but I'm going to let Greg take a little break. Greg, if you can stick around, that's awesome. If not, I totally understand. Appreciate
I'll stick
you being
around.
here. Okay, sounds great. I'll see you
Anything
guys
for you,
in.
Joel.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. See you in 9 minutes, everybody.
Joel.
Hello, COE. The world can hear us, correct?
Yes. Should this go another hour and a half
Yes.
and we have the other show, then we can keep this going and you can just start the other show separately. I'll text you details.
Okay. COE, since we're on the record here, I think that we should cover this UFO hearing tomorrow. I'm into it. And Vinny Adams said yes. Thumbnails being prepared. What do you think?
Sure.
Look at this. Tear dot. I like this guy. His master's voice. You're my master, COE. Where was Ethel, by the way?
Outside hiding. She was curled up, so I couldn't see her.
And is Frederick Morris Roosevelt Brown, is he still in the shoe or have you let him out?
I didn't even know that you left him in there. So he's been there for 2 hours and 16 minutes. I let him out a minute ago.
Poor Fred, man. Why does he cry when I'm home, but when you're there, he just doesn't even try? Why? It's amazing. All right. This is all to be continued. COE, I'll see you in a bit. Guys, I'll be right back.
Oh, I'm hungry. That's why I'm grabbing.
We've done.
Yeah, and then I got worked up.
Oh, she might be here Friday.
You just need some good food.
No, I'm doing report on
Okay,
Friday.
Yeah, that just got. I'm so nice.
What trial's that?
Oh,
Yeah, but that's getting, I mean, that, I thought was A moved or otherwise continued, and Cohan was number, and only. one
Cohen
was-
is the first place setting, but final pretrial's on Friday, so I got to keep both on the hook.
Well, I thought that they,
Or is there a stipulation to move him?
I thought there had been, because
You may be right.
I thought Hammett got moved somehow. Cause it,
You may.
when we
Right.
said that there, because I was involved with both of those.
She's okay. Just go around the front.
Court should resume any moment.
Brittany, can we go back on the record, please?
Judge Richard Mrazek presiding.
Counsel, Ms. Richins, welcome back. We're back on the record in 231-500-139. I appreciate the break. Ms. Nestor, anything else on the motion for in-person voir dire and jury selection?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Bloodworth?
No, sir.
This is docket 661. The relief requested is an order providing that jury selection and voir dire be conducted in person at the Summit County Courthouse. That is, that all potential jurors summoned for jury selection appear in person at the Summit County Courthouse for questioning by the court and counsel. First, defense counsel has not cited to any controlling or persuasive authority for the proposition that virtual jury selection, as opposed to insufficiently lengthy or rigorous jury selection, violates the Sixth Amendment as applied to the states through the 14th Amendment. But that's not the end of the inquiry. Under the standing order issued by the presiding judge of the 3rd District, all jury selection shall be performed by virtual means unless the parties can show extraordinary circumstances. And here, the parties and the court agree that the signature extraordinary circumstance in this case is the extreme level of media attention through multiple channels, multiple countries, nationwide. And while we can effectively replicate almost all features of in-person jury selection, we can accommodate a voir dire of 20 people at a time if that wants to occur. We can project the face of a human being on a 50-inch high-definition television to provide a view of their reactions that is far greater than if they're sitting 30 feet away in person. We can provide nonverbal cues of their surroundings and their living situation in their background from the locations in which they appear. We can treat any technical issues or failure to complete the questionnaire as a failure to appear in person, just like the old days. But what we can't do, as suggested by Mr. Bloodworth and emphasized by Ms. Lewis, is expose the jurors to the conditions that exist in the courtroom right now. Lots of people, the glare of a television camera, the feeling of isolation that they will experience viscerally when walking into and out of this courtroom in a case with this much attention. That cannot be replicated effectively in a virtual environment. Given a moment to reflect, the court is persuaded by counsel's arguments that the extraordinary circumstance in this case of the extreme level of media attention requires exposing potential jurors to that circumstance so that they know what they're getting into viscerally and their reaction can be judged in real time. Therefore, court is granting the motion for in-person voir dire and jury selection. The details of how we're going to accomplish this and whether public access to the jury selection process will be allowed in part at all remain for further consideration. Ms. Nestor, anything further?
No, you're not on that motion.
Mr. Bloodworth?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. I think that brings us finally to defendant's motion to reconsider bail and conditions of release. Is that correct, Ms. Nestor?
Yes,
Did
Your
you
Honor.
just say it's going to be in person?
May it please the court. Your Honor, as we argued in the motion that has been filed with the court, this court on June 12th of 2023 made a previous decision to detain Ms. Richins prior to trial. It is our position that since that time, there have been multiple material changes in circumstances that pursuant to Utah Code 77-20-102, parent 10, would be sufficient to reanalyze and reconsider your previous decision. I don't know if you would like me to spend a great deal of time on the material change in circumstances or if you've already made a decision in that area. I do think the most, there are a couple of things that have occurred that are significant since that hearing. First and foremost, at the time the hearing was held, Ms. Richins was facing a potential of a death sentence. The court took that into consideration, weighed it heavily in making your decision, commented on how that might impact elevated risk to be in the community. Several weeks after that hearing, the decision was made not to seek the death penalty. So I do believe that alone is a significant material change in circumstances sufficient to satisfy the statute requiring such before the court can reconsider bail. I also do believe the dismissal of the drug counts, which just happened this morning, also is a material change in circumstances because this court's one of the findings, one of the key findings the court made was the distribution of fentanyl and how dangerous that is in the community, and that particular offense caused the court great concern. Those charges are no longer pending.
The conduct is the same, though. They just won't be on the verdict form. The
alleged conduct.
The alleged conduct
Yes.
with respect to counts 1 and 2 still involves securing and then deploying,
Correct.
distributing, providing controlled substances.
Correct, but I do think that the dismissal of the charges is sufficient to get us over the statute for material change in circumstance.
I mean, candidly, I think that
Yeah.
to get you over the statute and back into the analysis, I think the declination
Of death
is
sufficient.
there. But so
Also,
redo the analysis for me, though, and maybe I can be absolutely transparent.
yes, please do.
In June 2023, the severity of the potential sanction for the first degree felony, of which there was one at the time in the operative information, was as severe as death, no less severe than 25 to life.
Correct.
Now she's facing 2 potential minimum sentences of 25 to life, which can be run consecutively, and maybe life sentences.
Correct.
Back in June 2023, she had a business that was highly leveraged, but she had a business. She had financial and real property connections to the community. I think there's a fair instance those have been destroyed by the pendency of this case.
Well, financially, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, in June of 2023, I was not concerned that Ms. Richins was a flight risk because of her connections to the community through her business and her family, and because her kids were here. Her relationship with her kids has been negatively impacted, to say the least, in the intervening time. Structurally, she just doesn't have the same connections to the community that she had then.
Well, I will tell you, Your Honor, as a mother, that there is no way Kouri Richins is leaving her children, no matter what they're being told, no matter what their situation is. She will never leave her children's side under any circumstances, even to her own personal grave detriment. She has still extended family in this community. She doesn't have the wherewithal to resettle somewhere else. She's lost everything. And you know, she literally has no resources to leave the country to resettle in another place. She would have no ability to even support herself. The release plan that we presented to the court involves her living with family who would have to provide her with a home and food. And I mean, she of course wants to get a job immediately and work. But I will tell you that as far as her connections to the community, the most important connection is the one with her sons. And she will never, ever, ever abandon her sons, even if it means she spends the rest of her life in prison. She's not going to do that. So I do think that as far as I wouldn't think that the court's previous finding that she's a flight risk should change. That she wasn't a flight risk. I'm sorry. I don't believe there's anything that's happened that should change that. I do think there are significant developments in terms of danger that the court can consider, which is the absence of the death penalty, the dropping of some of the drug charges, the fact that, you know, she has been in there a lot longer, I think, than anybody thought back in June of 2023 that she would be there. The withdrawal of her counsel, which is through no fault of hers, which is required under the statute, did cause significant delay to allow new counsel time to
How much was that actual delay?
Well, I mean, when we got in the case, there was no prelim. There wasn't even a prelim set because
it was a false start.
Right.
Right.
So we had to immediately set a prelim. I think we tried to set one as fast as we humanly could. I think we did a good job doing that. So we set the quickest prelim we could. And then the hardest part, as Your Honor will remember, was trying to find a date where the court, all the parties, everyone could be available. Again, none of that's through any fault of the defendant or the state, frankly. But it's just because of the nature of the beast. She's been in jail now, presumed innocent, for over 17 months. She's looking at an additional, 6 months till trial? And, you know, obviously if there's a second trial, that would be, you know, another 6 months. If there's an appeal, that would be longer. Obviously that would be a different circumstance, but all of that is not, you know, through any fault of the defendant. It's just the nature of everybody doing the best they can. But that's just the reality, that we have a woman presumed innocent being held in jail for an extended period of time. We also have had the benefit of a preliminary hearing, and the court is aware this is a circumstantial evidence case. And the facts of this case came much more into focus at the prelim. And there is, one of the things the court can consider when deciding bail is the weight of the evidence. Not, you of course presume the defendant to be innocent, but you can look at weight, and we have new evidence now as to what weight will be. And then finally, Your Honor, I would like to take a moment to address what I found to be extremely disturbing, which is we submitted to the court some certificates, letters from people in the jail of the positive programming that Ms. Richins has been involved in. And when I read what the state said, that presenting those was beneath this proceeding, I would like to address that.
I don't think you need to go too deep into it. I commend Ms. Richins for using her time in custody as productively as possible.
I find it very disturbing that an office whose job it is to put people in jail has such a lack of concept about what it means to sit in a jail cell in a cement box, isolated from everyone and everything you love for 17 months, being presumed innocent, and mock trying to do better, trying to engage with the jail community.
Ms. Nestor, with respect, I don't feel like you're talking to me so much right now as
I'm
you are
not
talking to the public into the Summit County Attorney's Office.
I am. And I think it needs to be heard. And I think, I could not be prouder of Kouri Richens for the way she's conducted herself under the most horrifying circumstances imaginable. And I honor the volunteers that come and do those programs and that spend their time and their energy, and they do it. I don't even think a lot of them get paid. I think they do it because they're good people and they care about people sitting in the jail not losing their minds. And so when they filed that answer, I wasn't going to file all the certificates she did, but when I saw their answer, I supplemented and filed them all, because I think each and every hour she spent engaging with her community, trying to focus on positivity, to learn, to better herself, is something this court can and should consider. And not only is it not beneath these proceedings, it is what our proceedings should be about.
I understand.
And so based on all of those reasons, I will say, we have a situation where I believe the amount of discovery we have in this case is now up over, Alex, more than 2 terabytes. Easily over 2 terabytes of discovery. We have hundreds of interviews, hundreds of thousands of documents. When Ms. Richins is detained, the ability to review and go over that material with her to help her prepare for trial is almost near impossible for us as a defense team. She is a critical part of her defense. She is a very bright, engaged, curious woman who wants to know everything that's going on with her case, as she has a right to. We have to, the jail is so accommodating to us, and they make this room available, but it is a room with glass between us. There is no way for us to share documents, to review, to look at videos. And point of personal privilege, there's a little metal stool that I have to sit on for hours and hours and hours to try to go over thousands of documents with my client. And it definitely puts us at a horrible disadvantage. There are conditions that this court could impose on Ms. Richins, including ankle monitor, GPS, house arrest, where she does not leave the home, period, for any reason. Where I could go to a place and share with her the documents at a kitchen table, and we could actually prepare for this trial and have a fair shot. There are conditions you could put on terms of social media. There are limits you could put on, you could put a gag order on her. You could prohibit her from contacting any witnesses, period, at all, full stop. You could require her to check in with probation, do constant drug testing, do Not that that's an issue in this case, but whatever the court felt the court needed to do to allow her a situation where she can prepare for trial and not be a danger. The release plan that we have provided to this court would provide for her residing in Salt Lake County. So the chance encounter of witnesses would go down significantly. There are very few witnesses in Salt Lake County in this case. Almost all are in Summit County. She would have the opportunity to have supervised visitation with her sons, which we discussed earlier. I'm not going to get into that. But in terms of she would be able to work, she would be able to, we could make certain that she's brought to and from court. We could, any conditions the courts wants. I think the behavior that she has displayed throughout the time that she's been incarcerated shows that she's always complied with the orders of this court and would continue to do so. And we are asking that the court take this very, very seriously. It just can't be overstated the disadvantage we are at when we cannot review the case materials with our client in a functional way. And we would ask that the court take that into consideration. Furthermore, you know, I read the state's response to our motion for bail, and it was almost, I believe they referred to her motive and to her character. And that's not before this court. The court's got to presume that she's innocent of this crime, and you know that, and I know that, and they know that. And why they did a brief that referred to her as someone being parasitic, which, by the way, I don't know if that just means because she's a woman and she's parasitic to her husband. I don't know why that phrase was used, but it's improper and it's inappropriate, and it has nothing to do with the bail determination. And so we're asking that this court consider taking the step to allow her under the strictest conditions that make you as comfortable as possible, so that we can work with our client and get ready for trial. And we do think clearly we've met a material change in circumstances sufficient to reconsider. And as we stated in our brief, the fact that she no longer is facing a potential death penalty means she has a constitutional right to bail. I know you know that, but of course it is
before too.
You actually ruled that way before, which was honorable.
Not so much that she had the right,
Yeah.
but she had the option to request, and I had the
Right.
authority to consider it.
And the case that came down after the detention hearing, the oh my gosh, I just had it
Barnett.
right. Thank you. The Barnett case also makes clear that even if you find that there's substantial evidence, and even if you find there's a risk of danger to the community, you still have the discretion
Yes.
to make the determination. And I believe you opined that you thought that before the Barnett case came down, and you were absolutely right. And the Barnett case reassured that that is in fact the state of the law, that you have ultimate discretion. And we are asking for the court's mercy and for the court's ability to work with our client. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Bloodworth, I read the state's brief. I think I understand your position clearly. Anything to add?
No, sir, thank you.
All right. Under Utah Code 77-2201, subsection 1, an individual charged with a criminal offense shall be admitted to bail as a matter of right, except if the individual is charged with a felony when there is substantial evidence to support the charge and the court finds by clear and convincing evidence that, 1, the individual would constitute a substantial danger to any other individual or to the community after considering available conditions of release that the court may impose if the individual is released on bail, or 2, the individual is likely to flee the jurisdiction of the court if the individual is released on bail. These provisions mirror Article 1, Section 8 of the Utah Constitution, which provides that all persons charged with a crime shall be bailable except persons charged with any other crime designated by statute as one for which bail may be denied if there is substantial evidence to support the charge and the court finds by clear and convincing evidence that the person would constitute a substantial danger to any other person or the community, or is likely to flee the jurisdiction of the court if released on bail. The court made that determination in June 2023 and found, one, that the aggravated murder charge was supported by substantial evidence, and two, that although the court was not concerned that Ms. Richins would flee the jurisdiction, given her structural ties to the community and to her children, which were in the community, that the court was nonetheless persuaded by clear and convincing evidence that she would constitute a substantial danger to herself and to the community if released on bail, and that that danger could not be mitigated by reasonably available conditions of release. Which brings us to today. Pursuant to her motion to reconsider bail and conditions of release, Ms. Richins argues that in the intervening time, there has been a material change in circumstances. That is the state's decision to decline seeking the death penalty. I agree that that is a material change in circumstances that allows the court under 77-20-207 subsection 1 to revisit the issue of bail and pretrial release. Defendant does not challenge the court's determination that the aggravated murder charge is supported by substantial evidence. Rather, defendant asserts that upon reflection of the status quo and intervening events, that Ms. Richins is not likely to flee the jurisdiction if she's released on bail, and no longer constitutes a substantial danger to the community given available conditions of release. Ultimately, the court is not persuaded. While defendant no longer faces the risk of the death penalty, she now faces 2 first-degree felonies, each with a minimum sentence of 25 years to life, and which may be run consecutively, one after the other. As before, the severity of these sanctions, put plainly, of potentially dying in prison, creates a powerful incentive for defendant to harm herself or witnesses in this case, and to flee the jurisdiction of the court. And as before, substantial evidence supports the charge that defendant secured fentanyl and deployed it to kill another person, which is inherently dangerous conduct. Moreover, defendant's relationship to her children and her ongoing real estate businesses were, in June 2023, substantial connections to the local community that mitigated the risk that she would flee. But now, in November of 2024, those anchors have been weakened substantially. The juvenile court has granted guardianship of Ms. Richins' children to members of Eric Richins' family, and through that guardianship, they are limiting Ms. Richins' contact with her children. And that circumstance is likely to persist in some form, even if Ms. Richins is released on bail. And there's a reasonable inference based on the evidence admitted at the preliminary hearing that defendant's real estate business is now defunct, and that she would not be able to restart it at any time in the near future, given the cloud constituted by this case. So as compared to June 2023, the current circumstances support a finding by clear and convincing evidence that defendant poses a substantial danger to the community, and that defendant is likely to flee the jurisdiction if released on bail. Moreover, the court is not persuaded that there are reasonably available conditions of release to mitigate those two risks. True, GPS-enabled ankle monitoring is available, but any report from those monitors comes days after the fact. We have, with some regularity, seen defendants just cut them off and flee, and we don't know about it until days later. They are not as protective as we would like. Living with family in Salt Lake offers Ms. Richins a place to go, and without impugning her family at all, they're not law enforcement officers, they're not probation officers. It's not reasonable to expect or require them to supervise her 24 hours a day. Given the extreme consequences that this case poses and the severe negative impacts that this case has had upon Ms. Richins' business and her relationship to her children, the court finds by clear and convincing evidence that there simply are not reasonably available means of mitigating her risk to the community and to herself, or the strong incentive for her to flee the jurisdiction of the court. Defendant's motion to reconsider bail and conditions of release, docket 653, is respectfully denied. Ms. Nestor, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Blebber?
No, sir.
Okay, that brings us to the end of motions for today. I don't think we have another motions hearing on the calendar, but do we want to put one on?
Yes, sir.
I know as trial approaches, there's likely to be any number of motions in limine, but we're going to have to make some decisions well in advance of the last week of April about how we're going to conduct jury selection, what the jury questionnaire is going to look like. When do you want to start talking about those things? Even just a pretrial conference to start sounding them out seems to be a good idea. Shortly after the holidays?
Probably. I would think yes.
Thanksgiving or Christmas?
Shortly after Christmas. I imagine we all have plenty to do between now and then, but if you need, I'll make room, Ms. Richins. I recognize you're in custody. I'll push stuff off my calendar if you need a hearing before that.
Your Honor, could we communicate with Summit County and our team and maybe communicate via email with the court?
Yeah.
On a good date that we might, or a range of dates. I do think we are going to have motions that relate to admissibility and
right.
suppression and that good stuff. That's the next round. So
that's fine. It doesn't have to be the next round.
Right. So I just feel like getting a hearing set in January is probably a good idea.
Okay.
Your Honor, as the state has done throughout, we will accommodate whatever scheduling the defense wants. Our preference, however, is to schedule it today. We found that, you know, if we leave your courtroom and promise to come back with dates, that lingers. So we would like to schedule at least the next round of motion practice. Defense has referenced some very specific motions in limine. I think we can at least set those.
I mean, we're just not ready to do it yet. We're going to have to get back to you on some dates, Your Honor. I mean, but we have both Ms. Lewis and I have trial matters pending.
May I offer a different suggestion?
Yeah.
Can we schedule a brief pretrial conference, say in about 4 weeks, to then come up with a schedule for figuring out how to get from here to trial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So that's December.
Would you please look at the week of December 9. Could I persuade you to have a hearing on the morning of December 12th?
Are you free then? In person, right, Your Honor?
You tell me.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Your Honor, the 12th works.
Mr. Bloodworth, the morning of the 12th?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's set a pretrial conference for December 12 at 9:30 a.m. We doing that in person, Ms. Nestor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Counsel, I need you to talk to each other in advance of the 12th and file something very short. Judge, this is what we want to talk to you about at 9:30 on Thursday. And just get that on file by end of the day on the 10th.
Okay.
So I have just a little bit of a preview of what's coming. Things that are front and center in my mind at the moment is a schedule of a hearing or hearings to work through motions in limine and other evidentiary issues in advance of trial. Or there's going to be any Rule 702 motions related to experts. And then specifics of jury selection. We need to talk about a case-specific jury questionnaire, when we're going to send it out, when we want to get it back, how we're going to handle the responses, how you want that process to relate to summoning jurors from Salt Lake and Summit counties. If you want to eliminate people from the pool based upon jury responses, meaning not even summon them, we have to build in time. So give some thought to that, start talking to each other.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Nestor, anything else on the record today?
Not on behalf of the defense, Your Honor.
Ms. Lewis?
No, nothing from me.
Mr. Ramos? Mr. Bloodworth?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Richins, I appreciate your patience this morning. We'll see you back on December 12th, 9:30 a.m. in person. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you. Court's in recess. Thank you.
All right.
This judge is awesome. He knows how to build suspense too. Took a little while. Not sure if Greg is here or not, but I'm going to keep it pretty brief anyway. You heard that yourselves. It was interesting because the judge had made kind of a big deal about this voir dire jury selection being on Zoom as to not be influenced by the media, which was, I thought, interesting. But then when he made his ruling, he said it would be in person. So the jury selection will take place in person. Bail denied. Bail denied. I think most of us expected that. The defense making the argument that she's got these three boys who need her. She already was trying to influence her brother from jail, as well as her mother. I think the judge knew about this, knew about the potential problems by having her released on bail. And I think, of course, that was the right decision. So Kouri Richens is staying behind bars. Next hearing to sort of get on the same calendar, the judge was saying, will be December 12th, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. And we will take it live when we have it. Appreciate you all being here. We're going to be here with Ruth Markell at 3:30 Eastern in a little less than 1 hour. COE, the floor is yours.
Joel, that's Greg there if you want him. He says he's available for a few minutes.
Okay. Hey, Greg, how are you? Oh, you're muted. Hold on. Go ahead, Greg.
You put me in the doghouse, so I couldn't.
Sorry.
The backstage.
Yeah.
I
Sorry
used to
about that.
be one of your faves. But
Yeah.
anyway, I was present. I did hear everything, and you articulated everything very well, Joel, just as you usually do.
Yeah. I mean, are you surprised that he did kind of a about face on the jury selection in person?
A little bit, but I don't know that that's real critical one way or the other. I think it's better for everybody if you do it in person. So the state didn't seem to feel strongly about it. He didn't feel strongly about it. the defense did. So why not just do it that way and make sure that the jurors, everybody has an open avenue to talk to them and see what they're about. And like I say, Salt Lake's not that far from Park City. People can get up there. It shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. And this next hearing, he scheduled for December 12th. He said it's going to be to kind of figure out a calendar. How long do those hearings generally go? What should we expect?
Probably about an hour, Joel. There may be some other motions filed, what he calls motions in limine, motions to sort of limit evidence or to bring in evidence. And he may address some of those, but with the trial still, 6 or 8 months down the road, I don't know that everybody's going to be ready to do much in December. So that should be a fairly short hearing just to schedule dates and whatnot.
There you go. That's a wrap on this hearing that lasted about 3 hours and 4 minutes. Greg Skordas, you see right there, he's still one of our faves. Greg will always be one of my faves. And I'm excited to meet Greg because I'm going to come out to this trial in Utah, and I will finally get to meet Greg in person. Joel's putting everyone in the doghouse. First, poor Fred, and now Greg. Yes, hopefully I will go home and I will release Fred from San Quentin State Prison, where he resides in solitary when I'm not there. But until then, Greg, thank you so much. We're back at 3:30. That's in 50 minutes. I'm going to try to grab a bite. We'll see you with Ruth Markel, 3 o'clock. Huge thanks again to Greg Skordas. And 3:30 p.m., 3:30, and then 7 p.m. tonight. Love you, America. Love you, Utah. Justice for the Richins family, Eric Richins and the boys.